95.7 The Game. You're listening and watching, if you're on YouTube, to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game. My name is Mark Randy, joined by Sterling Bennett, and we've got a lot to get to before the Niners and the Broncos kick off preseason week number 2. The Niners at home inside of Levi's Stadium against the Denver Broncos. Should be a ton of fun. A lot to get into today in the next 2.5 hours, Sterling. We'll also have reaction on overtime after the game. So stick with us on 95.7 The Game all day long. We have you covered pregame here on the Kickoff Show, postgame on overtime. Sterling, a ton to get into today. How you doing on a football Saturday in the Bay Area?
Football's back. In San Francisco, actually Santa Clara, but back in the Bay, red and gold are out there at Levi's Stadium for the first time since the divisional round against the Cowboys. I'm excited. Might get to see Brock Purdy today. Going to get plenty of Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. And as the 510 says, let Jimmy jacket. No, it's not going to happen anymore here, but Brock Purdy might jacket today at Levi's Stadium.
You know who else we might see?
Ooh.
Mike McGlinchey.
Ooh.
Back in the building.
Well, actually, he's actually hurt, but
He's not going to play,
No.
but he's there.
Keon
He'll be
Williams
on the
as
sideline,
well.
right?
A lot of Niners on the Denver Broncos.
You're right.
Sean Payton's back here too. Wow, so much.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
A lot to get to. Should be a really important game. It's kind of interesting the last couple of years when the NFL has gone to 3 preseason games instead of 4. You kind of figure out how teams are going to treat the preseason games. Generally, when there are 4 preseason games, you use the third as kind of the dress rehearsal, and then no one important plays in the 4th game. It seems like for the most part, most teams now treat the second game as more of a dress rehearsal, and then the third is kind of the one they punt on. But it's a little more up in the air with only 3 preseason games to get to. But you said it earlier, we might see Brock Purdy today. That's obviously one of the biggest stories. Coming off of that UCL injury he suffered in the NFC Championship game. If he gets a drive, if he gets 2 drives, he's out there for 1 snap. All eyes are going to be on Brock Purdy. We've seen him throw countless passes in training camp down in Santa Clara, at the joint practices in Vegas against the Raiders. But just seeing him, if we get to see him in live action against an opponent in a real NFL football game, I'm not going to be able to take my eyes off of him because, as we've learned, so much of this season will rest on Brock Purdy's health.
For myself, I think it's going to be almost a kind of second to relax and go, okay, starting quarterback's back on the football field. The worry of, is he going to be ready for week 1? Oh, that's out the window. Like, Brock Purdy, if he plays today, and I think we already know this, but seeing him out there if he does indeed play will kind of be this reassurance of, okay, we're fine. Now we're talking about quarterback 2 and 3. Who cares about those guys? Really,
Yeah.
Quarterback 1 is settled for seemingly the entire season. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Brock Purdy can stay healthy. But I think getting him back out there, getting him back in front of the fans at Levi's Stadium for the first time since the playoffs last year, I do think it'll kind of bring this calmness to the fan base for the first time, really, since the NFC Championship game loss against Philadelphia.
Yeah, you're listening to the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. We'll be with you up until 5:30 at kickoff, and then stay tuned on 95.7 The Game for overtime after the game, all the way up until 11 o'clock tonight. We want to hear from you, though. Give us a call, 888-957-9570. Let us know your thoughts. What are you expecting from Brock Purdy if he gets in the game today? Do you feel like you need to see Brock Purdy, or are you comfortable and confident with him, given what he did last year without him playing in the preseason? What do you think? We're also keeping an eye on the Xfinity Mobile text line, which is the same number, 888-957-9570. You can also let us know your thoughts on the 95.7 The Game YouTube channel, youtube.com/957 The Game, and on Twitch, twitch.tv/957 The Game. That's my first question, Sterling, is do you feel like you need to see at least some of Brock Purdy in the preseason? 8 games last year. Obviously, he was fantastic when he was out there playing. It is a relatively small sample size. You see superstar quarterbacks around the league playing in the preseason. Patrick Mahomes has already played in the preseason. He played in his team's first preseason game. You see it across the league. There are very few quarterbacks that simply don't play in the preseason. For me, if there isn't any injury concern, and clearly there isn't because he's been out there throwing and he's been cleared to practice 3 straight days now. That's a new thing this week. If there's no injury concern, throw him out there. I feel like I want to see Brock Purdy in some game action before week 1 against a really good defense on the road in Pittsburgh.
Well, it's almost like you want to see him take a hit. Like, can you get back up? How does the arm actually feel once you get hit? We kind of saw it in practice where Clelin Ferrell smacked the arm. Everyone said, is he okay? And he walked up the field and was fine and got back to practice the very next day. Today, for Brock Purdy, not that I want him to get sacked or happen to get hit, but it's almost like kind of go out there and for himself, his psyche, can I still do this? Can I take a big hit and get back up and keep moving the football? For myself, though, to see Brock Purdy out there, whether it's with Debo or the backups, to me, it is almost like when you sit there and you watch football and you really just sit back and go, man, like, we're going to be just fine. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's taken care of. All the offseason talk, and for Brock Purdy to come in, and he wasn't supposed to be healthy right now. He was supposed to be what seemed to be out until week 1 of the rumors of was he not going to be ready for week 1.
Well, 6 months from the surgery date was the day of week 1.
Right, and so to see him back early, everyone said he came back earlier than expected to be, and to see him out there potentially throwing 1 or 2 balls to Debo or to Christian McCaffrey maybe, to kind of see him get reacclimated on the field and, again, bring this calmness over the fan base of, can we please stop talking about quarterback 2 and 3? Can we stop debating Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and start talking about how far can this team actually go if Brock Purdy's on the field? And if we see him today and he looks a little rusty, I'm not going to panic, but some might. Are you going to panic, Mark?
If he looks a little rusty?
Hell yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Season's over, man.
We need to start Trey Lance. Week 1 in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I think what would be really beneficial for the fan base, because there's been just so much nerves, and I mean, there's been infighting between the fan base.
We hate each other. We really hate each other.
If you get labeled as a Trey Lance guy, if you get labeled as a Brock Purdy guy, those are two diametrically opposed sides in this fan base.
It's like
They're going at each other.
It's like Twilight.
Team Edward or Team Jacob,
exactly.
Am I right? Yeah. So I feel like, and I don't have a rooting interest on one guy or the other. You know, as someone who supports the 49ers, I just want someone who is going to be the best quarterback and can help this team win games and finally win a Lombardi trophy once again. So for me, I think seeing Brock Purdy out there, and let's just assume for a minute that he plays well, I think it's just going to be a calming factor on top of this team, and it's not going to kill the Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy discussion, but seeing him out there in live game action on television, every Niner fan that cares is tuned in to watch, and you see him play well. You know, he goes down and gets a field goal. He makes a couple of nice passes, completes one over the middle to Ayuk, whatever the situation is. I think it just could maybe calm down this fan base just a little bit, and considering the temperature of the conversation over the last couple of weeks, I think this fan base could use that.
Keep it going. Keep the chaos reigning over the fan base. But when you to me, if Brock Purdy comes out there and let's just throw a stat line out there, he goes, 3 for 4 or 3 for 6, no picks, has 24 yards, and you go, okay, you got a first down or 2, you didn't score any points. Even that small sample size, even that maybe mediocre box score, to me that would look much better than 1 for 9 and 1 big play. Like, to me, I want to come out and Brock Purdy can show us that I can still be consistent. I don't have to be this Trey Lance, sling it downfield to Danny Gray for a go ball. Come out here and, I'm going to say it, kind of be like Jimmy Garoppolo.
Uh-oh.
Like, just be efficient with the football. Don't turn it over. But also like Kyle Shanahan in practice and even after the game last week, let it rip. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't want to see a hesitant quarterback. That's what held Trey Lance back last week. And if Purdy comes out there, guns ablazing, feeling good about himself, and he goes out there and says, look, I'm going to play unafraid. I'm going to play like I did last year, like I haven't missed a beat. That factor, that presence is going to give this fan base, I think, a jolt. It'll give me excited even more so for Pittsburgh in week 1, knowing that we got this thing rolling. Our franchise quarterback, in quotations, is back, potentially. And Kyle Shanahan might feel vindicated if Brock Purdy comes out and plays well today. Like, can you please stop talking about backup quarterbacks? If Purdy goes out there and plays well, Shanahan's like, see? I told you so. You just stop talking about him. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up let it rip. That was something that Kyle Shanahan said about Brock Purdy earlier this week. More on that in a second. I see a couple of comments coming in on YouTube. No, it is not confirmed that Brock is playing today. Kyle Shanahan said earlier this week that there's a chance that he and the starters will be featured to begin the game a drive, 2 at the most, but we don't know for sure. If we do get that news, we will let you know here on the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game as we take you all the way up to kickoff at 5:30. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. But if you have any questions, thoughts, what do you want to see from this team? Not just the quarterbacks. We'll get into other position battles as well before we do wrap things up later on today. But let us know. 888-957-9570. That is the number to call and the Xfinity mobile text line. And as always, we're monitoring the 95.7 The Game Twitch and YouTube feeds as well. But Kyle Shanahan was asked earlier this week about Brock Purdy's interceptions in practice, right? And he has a lot of them. I think 10 now?
10.
In training camp, which that's a relatively big number.
Double digits.
Double digits. You don't want to see that, but Kyle Shanahan essentially said, when asked about it, and is he worried about that? Is that a big number? He said, of course, you never want to see interceptions, but you would much rather see them in practice than in the game. Practice is essentially a time where you can, quote, as you said, let it rip. Kind of test your limits, right? Yeah. See what works, see what doesn't work, figure out, if you're able to make that throw 30 yards down the field to the opposite hash. Are you able to do that? Figure it out now, because you're not going to want to figure it out on the fly in actual games, week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's I think the theme really of this game for the 49ers is let it rip. Yeah. It's Brock Purdy when he's in there. I think for me specifically, it's Trey Lance when he's in there. He just has to He just has to let it rip. He has to take chances. He has to show that he is trusting what he sees, and he has to just fire the ball in there. Maybe he throws an interception as a result, but we just can't have this hesitancy from Trey Lance anymore. So really, I think let it rip is kind of the theme of this game for the 49ers. This is obviously week 3 of the preseason is another chance, but this is probably the most important preseason game for this 49ers team. Not just, give your team a little bit of confidence moving forward, but for all the individuals that are fighting for spots on this roster, this is a gigantic opportunity to prove yourself. So from Kyle Shanahan's mouth, let it rip. Go out there and give it all you got. Fight for your spot, because nothing's guaranteed.
I mean, for Purdy specifically, it's almost like you want to see where your arm's at. You want to see if you can still make those throws, and during practice trying to build your arm strength back up. And you don't want to get into week 1 saying, hey, Kyle, I can't throw 15 yards to the sideline. I can't do quick outs or comebackers. I can't throw 60 yards down the field. And for Trey, in kind of a different light, it's, hey, you are seeing things correctly. You are seeing receivers that are wide open, not just once, but twice in their routes. Hit them. You are an NFL quarterback now. I get 4 games where the reps are minimal. I get it. But you are an NFL quarterback for 3 years. Trust your instincts. You've gotten here based on those for a reason. Trust them. And for not even the quarterbacks, defensive players, that nickel position's wide open right now, apparently, to defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. Isaiah Oliver apparently isn't the starting nickel right now. That's concerning to me. But if you're guys like Ambry Thomas and Samuel Womack and Deshaun Jameson, let it rip. Go out there and try to make a big play. Take a risk. That big risk could get you a job. And if we're week 2 of the preseason, you're playing against a relatively good team in the Denver Broncos who want to bounce back, go out there and make a statement. Take a risk. Make a big hit. Try to get an interception. If you make a mistake, okay, bounce back. You can always bounce back from a mistake, but you can't bounce back from missing a big play.
Yeah. And the Denver Broncos had a terrible first preseason game as well, much like the 49ers. I mean, they got their first team offense got dominated by maybe the worst team in football, the Arizona Cardinals. So they're coming out and they are wanting to, I think, prove a little bit of something as well, at least get some confidence back. Obviously, results in the preseason, we're not going to freak out over
They matter, Mark. The wins and losses matter today.
I'm not going to freak out over this team if they finish 0-3 in the preseason. I really don't care about that. I'm so much more focused on individual performances and seeing if a player like Trey Lance can bounce back, seeing if Isaiah Oliver can bounce back. That's something really interesting. We'll get into that later. It seemed like he was locked in to be this team's nickel corner. He played almost the entire preseason game last week and wasn't playing well, but considering that he was playing the entire game is at least a sign from Kyle Shanahan, like, hey, you got to prove something to me, buddy. So we can talk about that. I think there's an interesting move in practice this week in relation to who's getting those slot corner reps. We can talk about that, but focusing on the quarterback here for a little bit more, the plan right now, we don't know for sure. Brock Purdy maybe gets a drive or 2 to begin, along with maybe some of the rest of the starters. After that, it'll likely be Sam Darnold for the entire first half, and then Trey Lance will play, we imagine, the entire second half. We're not exactly sure. There's a chance maybe Brandon Allen gets a drive at the end of the fourth quarter. Who knows? He's been out of practice for a lot of this week because he just had a baby. Congratulations to the Allen family. But it does seem like it'll be Sam Darnold for the entire first half, unless Purdy takes a drive or two to begin, and then Trey Lance for the entire second half. Does it mean anything to you that it is Sam Darnold getting the first half reps this week when it was Trey Lance last week? Kyle Shanahan did say this was kind of always the plan. You want to flip-flop them. One gets the first half one week, one gets the second half the following week. That same one gets the second half the following week. Does that mean anything to you? Does it mean that in Shanahan's mind, Sam Darnold has popped ahead of Trey Lance in the battle for QB2, or is this just to give these guys a different look from one week to the next?
Not that Sam Darnold is starting. That doesn't make me think, he's ahead of Trey Lance for quarterback 2. What does make me think Trey Lance has fallen to quarterback 3 in Kyle Shanahan's mind is the fact that last week Kyle Shanahan said after the game that I almost played Trey Lance in that third quarter. And now this week, if Brock Purdy does indeed play, he's almost taking away reps from Sam Darnold. Why? Why does Kyle Shanahan feel the need to see Trey Lance more than Sam Darnold? It's because Sam Darnold makes him feel more comfortable. There's probably this, okay, I know what I'm getting from you. I don't need to see more of Sam Darnold to know who he is. I've seen him in practice. I've seen him for, 5 years now in the NFL. There's some okay things. There's some really bad stuff that we've seen from him, but under Kyle Shanahan, that stuff should get cleaned up. But for Trey Lance, seeing Kyle Shanahan, I want to see more of Trey. I almost played Trey Lance a little bit more last week, and I might play him more this week. I think that, to me, shows Kyle Shanahan wants to know what he actually has in Trey Lance. I don't think he truly understands just yet. I don't know if he loves what he's seen so far, but I do think he wants to see more to kind of figure out in his brain, what do I truly have in Trey Lance right now?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really read much into the fact that Sam Darnold is getting the reps to begin over Trey Lance in this game. I think it's just the plan that Kyle Shanahan had from the jump, and that doesn't really mean much to me. His comments after the game last week that you laid out, basically saying it was difficult for him to not put Trey Lance out there again in the third quarter, that to me, I agree with you. He needs to see a little bit more from Trey Lance, and he might not need to see as much from Sam Darnold. The other thing is just, frankly, how they played last week. Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Trey Lance, and he wasn't helped out by his offensive line, especially early, but 3 straight 3-and-outs, then got into a little bit of a rhythm, but still had 2 near interceptions after that, and the first 3 drives were not pretty. Had a number of openings that he just refused to throw the ball, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Just rip it. Let it rip. You see something, you see a guy open, you got an incredible arm talent, Trey. Let it rip, fire it in there. Maybe it gets knocked away. Maybe you're a beat late, but at least you're actually trying to make those throws. So the comments from Kyle Shanahan and then the actual performance on the field makes me think that, at least in Kyle Shanahan's mind, Sam Darnold has a little bit of a leg up on Trey Lance at this point for QB2. But you're right. I mean, as long as Brock Purdy comes out and gets through the preseason unscathed, and I've seen a couple of comments on our YouTube channel, no need to even play Purdy. Don't want to risk an injury. It's a meaningless game. I understand that because if you just get Purdy unscathed through the preseason and he's healthy, this quarterback 2 battle really does not even matter. Yeah. Although Niners history would suggest it does.
Especially last year.
But this Niners history has proven this is an important battle for QB2. Whether or not you think it's going to happen again, it is an important one. So you just got to see Trey Lance come out there and perform well, because I think, as most people can understand now, he's not quarterback 1. We know that at this point, 100%. And it's at best 50-50 for QB2, and I don't know who would have predicted that when Trey Lance was drafted 2.5 years ago.
What do you make of him needing to find his confidence again? Off the injury from the ankle after last year, comes back as a bad preseason game. You were hoping, or at least we were hoping, that we could see him gain that confidence back against the Raiders last week. What do you think Trey has to do today to get that confidence back? Should Shanahan drop some easy passes? Because last week he had those and didn't take him. So what do we need to see from Trey Lance today?
I mean, you got to see him getting a little bit of a rhythm early. I think the first 3 drives just really, it sank him last week. Yeah. And you could kind of see, I think, in the body language a little bit, and this is something I want to hit on in a little bit.
You got to tease it, man. You got to tease it.
I mean, really, the theme of the whole day, and I I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it is just let it rip.
Yeah.
That's the theme today, and we'll get into it for a number of different players coming up. But last week, Trey Lance, it was the issues early, the pocket breaking down, and really the fact that he's not as talented, athletic of a runner as we previously thought. Wasn't able to get out and extend plays with his legs. It almost seemed like Sam Darnold had more success evading pressure, extending plays with his legs than Trey Lance did, which is absolutely wild to me. But for Trey Lance, I would like to see him get a couple of easy ones on the first drive. Got to calm your nerves a little bit, but I want him to be aggressive, and I want him to show some emotion on the field. Maybe this is just who he is. You can kind of compare it maybe to Andrew Wiggins on the basketball court, right?
That's good.
He doesn't always show a ton of emotion, but Andrew Wiggins, a fantastic basketball player, a great, big, important reason why the Warriors won a championship a year and a couple of months ago now. I need to see Trey Lance fired up. If he converts a third down, I want to see him fist bumping, banging his chest, celebrating with his teammates. If he throws a nice touchdown pass to whoever it is, Ronnie Bell over the middle, I want to see him go down there and jump in the air and chest bump with his wide receiver. He hasn't had a ton of chances to show that because he hasn't played a ton, and when he has, there's been all these other issues. The rain in Chicago, obviously, he got hurt really early against the Seahawks. His first career start where he ran the ball like 20 times against the Cardinals his rookie year. He doesn't really have those opportunities, but I just need to see Trey Lance fired up. He's fighting for his life on this roster. I need to see him show some emotion and show that he knows what's at stake here. So I just want to see him let it rip, as Kyle Shanahan said. I want to see him fired up when he does something good. If someone makes a mistake, if his offensive line can't block someone, I want to see him get to his offensive lineman and say, hey, you got to do this better. Fix that. You can't let this happen. I'm fighting for my life right now. I want to see that emotion from Trey Lance today.
It's almost like you want Trey Lance to remember he's the 3rd overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft. It's almost like, hey, Trey, don't forget who you are. Don't forget your status. Former first-round pick, 3rd overall pick. What did we trade up to get you? Don't forget that we invested so much in you that go out there and be that player. If you have to be a little cocky, a little arrogant, be that. Like, you don't want to be quarterback 3 on this team. If you lose this job to Sam Darnold, this fan base is going to be livid, and they already are, but it's going to be even much more if he loses this job to Sam Darnold. For Trey Lance, I want him to go out there and be confident. Own the fact of you are, again, another first-round pick, that this team invested so much into you. The fact that we haven't seen that fire from Trey Lance, and this is my biggest concern with him outside of the injury and the inconsistencies. It does feel like Trey Lance has to have a big play, 45-yard touchdown pass to Danny Gray last year, or a one big touchdown drive to get him going. And to a certain extent, that's okay. I get that. Some guys need to find that rhythm, and maybe for Trey, instead of it being a screen pass or a small slant for 3 straight passes in a row, it's a big play. My concern is when you're 10 for 15, but really you should be 6 for 12, and you have one big play, and in reality is you didn't play well. That's concerning to me because the Shanahan offense isn't predicated on big, massive, chunk plays by the quarterback. It's predicated on get it to Debo and Ayuk
get it to your playmakers and let them
do the work. And so for Trey, it's like, I don't need you to hit a home run. Just get a double. That's fine. I love an extra base hit. I don't need the home run to get comfortable. For Purdy and Darnold, that seems like it's a single and a double here or there. And for Trey Lance, if I don't get that home run, I'm going to be inconsistent all night long.
Well, that's interesting because it feels like the knock on Trey Lance and maybe the reason why he's somewhat fallen out of favor within the Niners coaching staff is that Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, perhaps even Brandon Allen, consistently hitting the easy ones, right? They're hitting the gimmies. And Trey Lance, not that it's been terrible, just not hitting them as consistently as the other quarterbacks on the roster. And you're right, so much of this 49ers offense is predicated around the quarterback just making the simple, quick decision, right? I mean, that's what made Jimmy Garoppolo so perfect for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, well, the system, not Kyle Shanahan.
The system, you're right. And I'm not here to say that I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback I would choose to run this system.
Yeah.
I have my issues with Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback, as I think most 49er fans do. But that's what made the fit work. And maybe it was Kyle Shanahan kind of working his scheme around the talents that his quarterback had. But for the time being, it seems like Brock Purdy somewhat fits into that mold just a little bit. And Trey Lance simply doesn't. So we'll see how it works out today. If he can get into a little bit of a rhythm, find Jordan Mason out of the backfield, hit an easy one to Ronnie Bell, find his tight end, whoever it is, Ross Dwelly, or they've got like 5 tight ends fighting for a couple of spots right now. We can talk about that as well. Just get into a little bit of a rhythm early. Maybe he can hit the big play later, but just get chunks, stay ahead of the chains, get a little bit of momentum going, and we'll see if you can work this out this week against the Broncos.
There is no tomorrow.
There is 100%.
For Trey Lance, there might not be.
There might not be. So, that's the theme of today for the San Francisco 49ers. There's no tomorrow. Let it rip. Leave it all out on the field today. I know the final result doesn't really matter that much.
It does.
But for these individuals, it means the world. So let it rip, Trey. Let it rip, Brock. Let it rip, Sam Darnold. Let it rip, everyone fighting for a job. This is hugely important, and we're breaking it down all day long, leading up to 5:30. Kickoff, Niners and Broncos. It's the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Time for a quick break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. What are you expecting from Trey Lance and company today? Do you want to see Brock Purdy on the field today? 888-957-9570. That's the number to call. It's also the Xfinity mobile text line. And as always, we're checking out the YouTube and Twitch chats here on 95.7 The Game. We're back with more on the Kickoff Show right after this here on 95.7 The Game.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets?
Welcome back. You're listening to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you, getting you ready for kickoff T-minus 2 hours now. Niners and Broncos from Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. We are fired up, getting you set for a hugely important preseason game for the San Francisco 49ers. You just heard from Kyle Shanahan there earlier this week. He was asked about some of the noise that's been swarming Trey Lance earlier this week. I think specifically asked about what Michael Lombardi said about Trey Lance, saying that just
crazy. Too far.
Yeah, I don't even want to say it, honestly. It went a little bit too far, but there's been so much noise around Trey Lance, so many things said about him, mostly bad, specifically after the game against the Raiders. And Kyle Shanahan said, hey, Trey Lance is just good at blocking that stuff out.
Yeah.
We'll see how he performs today, because in my mind, watching him from afar, it just kind of seems like when something goes bad on the field for him, it tends to snowball.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he can bounce back from a little bit of adversity here, and something that you let off the show with. Let it rip, Trey. That is what you need to see from him. And you said something really interesting to me before we went to break. And by the way, if you want to get in on the conversation, you can. 888-957-9570. That's the Xfinity mobile text line and the number to call in. We want to hear from you. What do you want to see from Trey Lance, Brock Purdy if he plays, Sam Darnold and company? You're listening to the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett. You said you want Trey Lance to not forget who he is. Don't forget that he's the 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft. That's interesting to me, because I feel like for me, there might need to be kind of a mindset shift for Trey Lance. He's the 3rd overall pick from 2.5 years ago. But frankly, that doesn't matter anymore. You're not guaranteed anything because of your draft position.
You're right.
He was guaranteed a spot on the roster 2 years ago. He was guaranteed the starting job last year because of his draft position. Even though I think at that point last year, Kyle Shanahan probably had his doubts about Trey Lance's ability to win right now.
Mm-hmm.
But he was guaranteed that last year. Now with what Brock Purdy did, and with them bringing in another experienced quarterback in Sam Darnold, he's not guaranteed anything right now. So I think for me, I need to see a little bit of a mindset shift for Trey Lance. I'm not saying I feel like he feels entitled to anything, but when you're a 3rd overall pick, I think you can kind of rest on your laurels knowing you have kind of the pedigree of that top pick. For me, I need to see Trey Lance act more like a Brock Purdy last year, who's not guaranteed anything, knowing that he needs to take advantage of every single rep, every single snap, every single opportunity that he has moving forward. And that's what makes this game so important for Trey Lance, because who knows how many more opportunities he's going to get. I think for me, Trey, forget about your 3rd overall draft status, 3rd overall pick draft status, because that is out the window now. You got to prove that you are a good enough football player to be on this roster.
I think it's both, right? It's remember who you are and the fact that you belong here. Like an NFL franchise decided to almost wager their entire future on you. They had a Super Bowl window that could have easily closed or could be closed right now had Brock Purdy not done what he did last year, right? We'd all be talking about, oh my goodness, Sam Darnold and Trey Lance are here. This team has no quarterback, whereas now we're saying, oh, Brock Purdy's here. We're going to be fine as long as he stays healthy. But I think for Trey, it's, yes, remember who you are and the fact that a franchise bet their future on you, but play like you're desperate. Play like every rep matters. Play like every throw, you have to find that window. You don't have to be 10 for 10, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. But what you can't be is 10 for 15, almost 2 picks, 120 yards, and not hitting open guys. It's stuff like that where that's going to make Kyle Shanahan say, I can't trust you to play. I don't even want you to be on the team. That would make Kyle Shanahan say, I made the wrong draft pick 3 years ago. And I think right now, we saw it last year when Trey was supposed to be the guy, brought back Jimmy G to hedge their bets because Trey wasn't getting the job done in training camp. We saw it this year too, bringing in Sam Darnold to hedge their bets with the backup quarterback spot. This right now, I could make the argument that preseason game 2 tonight, Niners, Broncos, this could be Trey Lance's last shot to win the quarterback 2 job. If he puts the egg on the scoreboard again, he's 0 for 2. And if Sam Darnold plays a mediocre, easy peasy, hits the checkdowns, and he's Kyle Shanahan saying, I can win with that, But what I can't win with is you're not hitting open guys, coming out here and being afraid, coming out here and being inconsistent, coming out here and just not running the offense. Darnold's already proven he can do that in one game to me. Whereas Trey, you're sitting back saying, I'm really just not sure who you are as a quarterback. And I might have to question, should you even be a quarterback on this team right now?
Okay, so 3:39 now as the clock changes on Saturday, the 19th of August, the day of preseason game number 2, and you're listening to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game. Let's take a little bit of a status report. Let's check in right now, okay? So Brock Purdy, QB1. We know that.
Easily.
There's a conversation still for QB2. I think we both agree Sam Darnold has a leg up on that conversation at the moment. Do you agree there?
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
so let's just say, for the moment, Sam Darnold, QB2. I think we also both agree that Trey Lance has the leg up on Brandon Allen for QB3. But at what point does Kyle Shanahan say, do we want Trey Lance on this roster as QB3? Is it worth it? What, he's making $10 million this year?
Yes.
Thereabouts?
Around there, yes.
Is it worth it? If you were to guess right now, come cut down day, 53-man roster, is Trey Lance on that roster? And I don't think it's a cut. I don't think he's going to get cut. I'm talking about a potential trade.
Right.
Is Kyle Shanahan happy with Brandon Allen as QB3, much cheaper option? He was a QB2 last year behind Joe Burrow, one of the best teams in the league, the Cincinnati Bengals. You look around the league, he's probably one of the better QB3s in the league, if he is your QB3, honestly, in my opinion. So if I had to ask you right now, again, Saturday the 19th of August, the day of preseason game number 2.
Before the game, mind you.
Before the game, and we can check back in on overtime after the game here on 95.7 The Game. Do you think Trey Lance makes the 53-man roster for the San Francisco 49ers in 2023?
Yes, but because he has to. I think he has done things in practice that'll make you say, there's the Trey we know. There's a Trey we drafted 3 years ago. That's the quarterback we picked. But when you ask...
So he has to, as in the Niners feel like because of where he was drafted, he has to make the roster?
No, because I do think in practice he has shown things that would give them maybe some comfort in the fact that he can do certain things, but there still are the inconsistencies. I think what keeps him on the roster is the money. They're only going to save around like $4 million in trading him, taking a $5 million dead cap hit, I believe. Yeah. But also, who's trading for Trey Lance? Like, who's going to give them more value in a draft pick or a player than he is on the roster right now?
And that's what makes this game important as
well.
Right.
If Trey Lance plays well, does it make it easier to trade him? Maybe a team like Atlanta goes, hey, we'll take Trey Lance. We almost drafted him 3 years ago. If you didn't take him, we would have. We'll take him now. Maybe that's the case. But if he plays well today, could he win the quarterback 2 job still? Yes. Like, there's so many possibilities open. But
100%.
But for Trey, it's like that spectrum is like you can be backup quarterback number 2 or you can be off the team in a month or so.
Craig, you're shaking your head back there. What's up?
Well, the hypothetical you posed, you're saying that if week 1 comes out and we're looking at the depth chart and he is the 3rd option on that chart, he's gone. There's no way you're paying $10 million for that spot. I think there's a great chance you see him a 5th or 6th round pick down to Tampa and be the backup to Baker Mayfield. I mean, like you said, Atlanta, I read that they kind of like him, Riddler out there, but there's no way you're having that guy at 3rd for $10 million for when it's a 53 roster. A second, I could see it. 3rd, no way. You're going to take a 6th round pick at that point. You'll take anything, but there's no way you can justify having that guy as a 3rd.
If they get a 4th round pick, if they get a 3rd round pick offered, I think 100% they're taking it. The reports from Michael Silver earlier this offseason was they were offered a 5th, and they said no. And that was early in the offseason, and they said no before the draft. So if they get offered a 5th again, a 6th, anything less than a 5th, I think they're sticking to their guns and saying no once again. I think they're holding out for at least a 4th round pick. I don't think this is something where Kyle Shanahan is saying, I'm refusing to trade him or I'm going to trade him. It's just a matter of what someone offers. And that's what makes this game so important, because if he plays well and shows something good, maybe there is, again, a quarterback-hungry team out there who then can say, you know what, okay, Kyle, here's a 4th round pick. Give us your quarterback.
Well, that's you. You're saying, so if Kyle and them are saying, hey, we can't get nothing better than the 4th, we're not going to ship them out, then when are you going to see him on the field again to get a fourth? The way he holds PATs in practice looks really good.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless you lose your next two quarterbacks, you're never going to see him on the field again for 17 weeks. So how does he become a fourth-round pick at that point?
It's a great question. It's a losing proposition. Yeah. I mean, I think Kyle Shanahan is very stubborn in that regard. He's not going to move off the quarterback he drafted third overall.
That would be him saying he was wrong. Which doesn't happen usually.
100%. And the reality of the situation is he's going to be wrong. Yeah. He is wrong. He's been wrong. And he's going to continue to be wrong about this pick. It's just the way it is. But I think he has a little bit too much pride to let go of the third overall pick for a fifth or a sixth round pick. I think he's keeping his eye on a third round pick. If he gets that, all right, Trey, see you later. But if there's anything less than that, maybe a fourth on a bad team, I don't know. But I think I'm with you. If I were to guess right now, Trey Lance is on the 53-man roster simply because no one else values Trey Lance enough for Kyle Shanahan to say, okay, that's worth it.
Well, that right there. No one values Trey Lance enough. But San Francisco may value him enough to, one, not trade him, but also, two, to keep him on the roster and pay him $10 million because, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt last year. Trey Lance got hurt last year. Brock Purdy got hurt last year. Why would you want to put yourself in a position where Brandon Allen's taking meaningful snaps down the road? And you'd at least have, if Trey Lance is still on the roster and Brock Purdy and Darnold get hurt, that you'd have someone that at least has some upside, where Brandon Allen is kind of just a fine backup quarterback. You'd have someone that can actually do something for you at least. He may go 1 for 9, but the 1 for 9 is a 75-yard touchdown pass, and you win a game maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. But then the other situation is, all right, you have 4 quarterbacks on your roster, Purdy, Darnold, Lance, and Allen.
Yeah.
You're keeping 3. That seems obvious. Not every team is going to keep 3 on their 53-man, but the Niners, I think, certainly will. You're not keeping 4, especially not with the injury to Ray McCloud, and he has to make the 53-man roster before you can transition him to an injured list. Are you just going to cut Brandon Allen, who you have spoken so highly of this entire offseason? I mean, trading Trey, and again, I don't think it's going to happen, but trading Trey at least ensures you are getting something for one of your 4 quarterbacks. When the other situation is, you could try to trade Brandon Allen, I guess, but what are you going to get? A conditional 7th-round pick?
If you're lucky.
You're not going to get anything.
Yeah.
So if you are of the mindset where, hey, I should take advantage of the 4 quarterbacks we have under contract right now, let's not cut one of them. Let's just get something back for one of them. Keep the other 3 because we're not going to keep all 4 anyway.
Yeah, but why even make, would a 6th-round pick next year be worth trading a quarterback that you might need to play this year if someone else gets hurt? Why make that move?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose for the 49ers if it gets to that point.
And then you have, then you're putting yourself in a place where the Dolphins have gotten Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb and Jalen Waddle, and you've gotten Trey Lance. Then you traded Trey Lance for a 6th-round pick, and then that 6th-round pick becomes whoever. It could be a great player by all means, but you're sitting there saying, wow, we gave them 3 all-pro players, and we got a 6th-round pick.
To be fair, the Tyreek Hill trade, the Niners pick was involved, but there were other picks involved. They didn't just get Tyreek Hill.
But they needed that pick to make that trade.
100%. And the Niners' original pick in that draft became Micah Parsons, 12th overall pick. So imagine Micah Parsons on this defense right now.
Or Jamar Chase, Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell. Should I keep going?
No.
These are star players that they missed or decided not to pick instead of because they wanted to get their quarterback.
Although, considering what's happening with Nick Bosa right now, do you need another gigantic contract on this roster? Obviously, the talent would be insane. And imagine adding any one of those guys to the mix. And, of course, they wouldn't be due contract extensions for another year.
What if it took trading Trey Lance to re-sign Nick Bosa? What if that money was utilized to re-sign Nick Bosa?
Oh, you do it in the blink of an eye.
Right. But so you would that's an easy yes,
100%,
because you're re-signing a defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, all pro. Who's when
Nick
he's
Bosa
healthy
is your most important player on the roster.
Yes, but for a 6th-round pick, it's no, I wouldn't do it. I would keep Trey.
Yes, but in that hypothetical, it's based in reality where the Niners can pay Nick Bosa and have Trey Lance on the roster.
Right. So why not just do that?
Just trade him for a 6th?
No. Why not just keep both of them?
Oh yeah, I think they're going to.
Okay.
It's if you could get something of somewhat value for a quarterback who, if things go to plan, is not going to take a single snap for you this year. It makes sense to me. Again, I don't think it's going to happen, but it makes sense to me. Why not get something for a guy who hasn't done anything for you? Obviously, you're holding out hope, but even if he gets playing time, and even if he does play, say Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold get injured and you need Trey Lance to start 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm fairly confident that he can at least keep you afloat, win a game, maybe win both games, depending on who the opponents are. Mm-hmm. But I'm not confident that if he is tasked with leading you through a whole season, playing in a postseason game, I'm not confident that it's going to work out. So if you're in a situation where that's your read on the guy and you could get something for him, might as well.
Do you read this as, many fans ask, can they just give Trey Lance some reps? But the fact of the matter is, he's not going to get the reps he needs ever here if things go to plan. Like, he's never getting those reps, ever. So at that point, why keep him? If he needs those reps so bad to prove himself or to get better, and he's never going to get them, what's the point of keeping him?
You're holding out hope that you might need that quarterback and that he'll surprise you. I don't know. The 49ers are in a position that no other team in NFL history has ever been in. Yeah. It's really uncharted waters. What do you guys think? Do you want the 49ers or not want? Do you expect the 49ers to keep Trey Lance on the 53-man roster come cut down day in a couple of weeks? 888-957-9570. That's the Xfinity mobile text line and the number to call, 888-957-9570. You're listening to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. A little more than an hour and a half until kickoff between the Niners and the Broncos. We have you covered up until 5:30 here on the Kickoff Show. A ton more to get into over the next hour and a half, Sterling. We will talk more about the quarterbacks. Of course, we will transition at some point and talk about the defense, some other key players on the offense as well. But I wanted to play something from earlier this week. JT O'Sullivan, former 49ers quarterback, by the way.
The GOAT.
I don't know about that.
He's the GMOAT. Not even that. Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I love JT O'Sullivan. If you're unfamiliar with his work on the QB School,
it's great.
Great YouTube channel, great website. Check it out. JT O'Sullivan was on with Willard and Dibbs earlier this week, and this is something we were talking about a little earlier, the mindset for Trey Lance. This is what he thinks Trey Lance should be thinking heading into a second preseason game. Again, this was earlier this week on 95.7 The Game with Willard and Dibbs.
When you're the third overall pick, you're essentially guaranteed an opportunity with that organization. Well, his opportunity in reality might have come and gone. So now you're at changing your lane, changing your perspective to, hey, the next time I'm going to fight to stay on the roster, and the next time I get on the field, I'm not coming off. So that's kind of a different mindset. That's almost like a later round pick mindset, an undrafted free agent mindset, a more journeyman mindset versus a guy who is entitled top 3 pick, I'm going to get an opportunity. So, just the reality of your situation is adaptive, and it's changing, and it moves probably in a direction that Trey Lance doesn't like right now, but you've got to be able to be resilient enough to refocus and fine-tune your game so that when you get that opportunity, and I really do think that they've proven that they're going to play a lot of guys at the position. Don't come off the field the next time you get on.
That's really important there. I think that last line. When you get that opportunity, Trey, and if you're on this roster this year, it very well might come. History says it will come at some point. You got to take advantage, and you have to make Kyle Shanahan, you have to force him into a tough decision. You have to play so well that he has to question whether or not Brock Purdy is still the best quarterback for this team. So that begins today. Really, it began last week, but it begins anew today for Trey Lance. Going out there and just beginning to stack solid play, solid decision, solid throw after solid throw. Because if he does not do that, he is just simply running out of time to, as we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, prove that he deserves to be on this roster, because there are so many reasons why the Niners would consider not having him on the roster.
And it's not like Kyle Shanahan isn't emotional at the quarterback position. He got so mad at Jimmy Garoppolo, he said, I'm done. Literally a year removed from going to a Super Bowl. Then Trey Lance, you're my guy, I'm going to start you. Oh, you don't look that great, bring back Jimmy Garoppolo. Now Brock Purdy's my guy. It's not like Kyle Shanahan hasn't changed his mind what seems like 4 or 5 different times here in San Francisco. So it's not like, well, yes, based on play, you can assume the job is done, wrapped up, Brock Purdy's quarterback won. But if those guys go down ahead of him and he goes out there and plays, well, it's it's not like we're writing off Trey completely. We're writing off the fact that he's not going to be the starting quarterback to begin the year. But there really is a chance where if he comes in and plays 3, 4, let's say maybe 5 games this year and plays really well and shows the improvement, and then Brock Purdy gets healthy again, what does the team feel? That's always been kind of where Kyle Shanahan's got his temperament from, because a couple years ago was, hey, Kyle, stop the 2 quarterback stuff. Just play Jimmy. We don't want the 2 quarterback stuff. The leaders went to him and say, we're done with the 2 quarterback stuff. Last year, hey, Kyle, Jimmy Garoppolo's still here.
No one wants him. Bring him back.
They might think about keeping him. And they went to guys like Fred Warner and Kyle Juszczyk and the leaders on this team to ask them, can you guys do this with us?
Yeah.
Are you guys okay bringing back both these starting quarterbacks? They said yes. Could Trey Lance win over the team? I don't think Trey Lance has ever won over the team. And if he wins over the team, I think he could, in a way, win over Kyle Shanahan.
That's interesting. So perhaps the route for Trey Lance, I mean, I guess it kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
But for Trey Lance, if you prove to your teammates you are good enough, that's maybe enough of a push for Kyle Shanahan to be like, okay, maybe I was actually right about this guy a couple years ago, and I was wrong about him most recently. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation because
I feel like Trey's never had an advocate, if that makes sense.
he hasn't. It's always felt awkward.
Yeah.
Right? Because when he was starting last year, early in the season, even before he got injured, and I guess throughout training camp, really, when there was still the Jimmy Garoppolo up in the air question mark, there were all the rumblings out of 49ers camp, like, this team still loves Jimmy Garoppolo, and they still feel like
right there.
he gives them the best chance to win, right?
Yeah.
And it's another reason why I just feel so badly for Trey Lance, because he's been dealt a really bad hand. Mm-hmm. I mean, it hasn't, I don't know if I want to use the word fair, but he has been faced with a lot of bad luck throughout his career. And it's really wild considering when he was drafted, Zach Wilson to the Jets, terrible situation. Mm-hmm. Mac Jones to the Patriots, not bad, but whatever.
They were in the playoffs his first year.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence to the Jaguars, who were coached by Urban Meyer at that point. Terrible situation. Justin Fields in Chicago, obviously a bad situation. It looks better now, but a bad situation at the time. Trey Lance to the 49ers, who have Super Bowl aspirations. The thought there was, oh my God, Trey Lance couldn't have gone to a better place, right? Yeah. Now you look around the landscape. Trevor Lawrence is an ascending superstar quarterback.
Yeah.
Justin Fields, not at that level, but certainly ascending, and has a lot of hype around him entering this season. Obviously, Zach Wilson, he's no longer the starter because
they ayahuasca in the building now.
They brought Aaron Rodgers in. Mac Jones, question marks there as well. But at least those guys have gotten opportunities to prove themselves. Trey Lance hasn't. So maybe in reality, this was the worst possible situation for Trey Lance. At least the way it went, you could argue, well, if he was just a better quarterback, he would have started all last year, and this is an entirely different conversation. But we can continue diving into that and more. It's the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. An hour down, an hour and a half more to go. Give us a phone call. What do you want to see from the 49ers today? 888-957-9570. More Kickoff Show coming up next right here on 95.7 The Game.
Kelley Blue Book is the one-stop shop for pricing, fixing...
half away from kickoff between the 49ers and the Broncos. Preseason game number 2. As we look around the rest of the NFL, a lot of starters playing. Tua Tagovailoa, as we have that game up on our television right now here in the studio. He played today for the Dolphins. Some other starters as well playing. And Sterling, looks like maybe some confirmation. There will be some 49ers starters playing today as well.
We do have about 5 or 6 starters currently warming up on the field to play. We have Talanoa Hufanga, Kyle Juszczyk, Mooney Ward, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, and Brock Purdy.
Ooh, Brock Purdy warming up with a handful of other starters, huh? So it looks like Kyle Shanahan made up his mind. He said earlier this week, Sam Darnold will get most of the first half, all of it if Brock Purdy does not play, but there's a chance Brock Purdy plays a drive or 2, and based on who's warming up inside of Levi's Stadium right now, it seems like Brock Purdy will play.
I'm so excited.
Wow.
It didn't sound like it, but I'm very excited because, and look, and I'm sure you are as well, and I'm sure the fans are the ones that really, that back Brock Purdy. And this isn't really a, Brock Purdy fan or stan. This is a San Francisco 49ers starting quarterback is going to play today. Whether it was Jimmy G or Trey Lance last year or Jeff Garcia in the early 2000s. I don't care who it is. When the starting quarterback plays, you get excited because it does determine how good this team can be, how far you can go. And if Brock Purdy comes out in game 1 and looks strong and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves, this team already has, Lombardi Trophy aspirations. If he comes out and plays well, the fan base is going to be talking about, we're going undefeated. We're going to beat every single team by 25 plus points. This is a chance for the San Francisco 49ers to kind of ignite the fan base into feeling, we don't have to talk about quarterback 2 anymore. This is a starting quarterback that we can believe in, that Kyle Shanahan called the real deal, had to clarify it, and goes, he's a legit guy. Kyle Shanahan buys in. I don't understand why some fans aren't already, but if he plays well today, maybe some fans might actually do that.
Yeah, you brought up that sound. I will play it here in just a minute. If you were just joining us and you missed it, Brock Purdy, along with a handful of other 49ers starters, are warming up at Levi's Stadium right now. It seems like Brock Purdy is going to play a drive, maybe 2 today. We will, of course, let you know if we do get official confirmation from Kyle Shanahan, but based on who's warming up, it does seem like that is a possibility. Brock Purdy warming up at Levi's Stadium right now. We're about an hour and a half away from kickoff between the Niners and the Broncos. It looks like we will see the return of Brock Purdy to a competitive football game for the first time since the NFC Championship game. You mentioned the sound. Again, it's the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you up until kickoff at 5:30. You mentioned a couple of weeks ago Kyle Shanahan saying that Brock Purdy is the real deal. The question was, again, 2 weeks ago, hey, Kyle, is Brock back to where he was last year? And this is how Kyle Shanahan answered it.
I don't think anyone's back to where they were exactly last season. We're going through training camp. A lot of guys had more practices than him, but we only had 6 in OTAs, but he'll get there. He's doing some good things. They're all doing some good, all doing some bad. But we're not worried about Brock. Brock's the real deal. He knows how to play, and we just got to have our team keep getting better, and he'll keep getting better as we go.
That was the line right there. Brock's the real deal. I know that caused a bit of a hubbub on 49ers Twitter. Oh my God, he has never complimented a quarterback like that before. He complimented Brock Purdy off of 8 games played, 7th round rookie last year, entering now his 2nd season. Not really a normal offseason, rehabbing a UCL injury, and that was as complimentary as Kyle Shanahan has ever been. And it was such a big deal that he was later asked about it earlier this week on Sirius XM NFL Radio and asked to kind of further describe that answer, explain why he called him the real deal. And here's what Shanahan said.
That he's the real deal, and what I mean by the real deal is a legit guy. You don't have questions about him. You don't know that until he plays in games. And we got to play with him for 7 games last year, and they're real games. You watch the tape, you can't take anything away from him. He was just important as Christian was, as Debo was, as all these guys are. And when you watch some of the plays he made, just getting the ball to guys so consistently, you watch some of the plays he made when nothing was there and you didn't think there was a play, and he'd come find a way to make one. And the fact that he never lost a game. When you have that much tape, when people ask me those questions, I don't get what they're so surprised about. He put it on tape. Now you got to go out and do it again. You got to get healthy, which I think he has. Things do get harder the more you play. But he played a while. It's not just me who says that and thinks that. It's every player on our team. So that's not what we're worried about. We're trying to put the best guys out there. I always say, like most people do, you never stay the same. And Brock played real well in those 7 games, and we expect him to play better this year.
Played real well, and we expect him to play even better this year. And now it looks like today he will get his first opportunity to do that. Most likely a very limited amount of snaps today for Brock Purdy. A drive, maybe 2. He's warming up at Levi's Stadium right now. But again, it's kind of wild to hear Kyle Shanahan be that complimentary towards Brock Purdy because his quarterbacks almost never get those kinds of compliments. So it has to mean something that Kyle Shanahan was willing to pay those compliments to Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy is the first quarterback since MVP Matt Ryan that Kyle Shanahan has fully backed. If that doesn't get you excited as a football fan, as a Niner fan, as a fan that just wants the best quarterback to play, a head coach that is historically not, been the most comforting or coddling of a quarterback is saying he's the real deal. He's a legit guy. More than he has to any other player since the quarterback that won an MVP with him. If he is that much into Brock Purdy's back pocket and saying, you are my guy, you're my starting quarterback, and I'm sure he thinks he's the franchise quarterback of this team right now, why does anybody have a question? It's not I understand questions of having, being Trey Lance being the guy. But after seeing 7-8 games, I guess, of Brock Purdy, why are some fans not bought in? I don't understand that.
Well, we could put that question out there, 888-957-9570. Why are 49er fans not more bought into Brock Purdy? That's the number to call. Also, you can hit us up on the Xfinity mobile text line. We'll take a look at the YouTube and Twitch chats as well. Why are Niner fans not more bought into Brock Purdy if you hear those kind of compliments from his head coach, Kyle Shanahan? I don't agree with this, but I can just imagine there's a lot of Niner fans out there who say, why would I trust Kyle Shanahan's quarterback judgment? He drafted Trey Lance. He traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, who obviously flashed and got within a completion of winning a Super Bowl, but we all know his faults and why he isn't a good enough quarterback to consistently win a Super Bowl. I think that would probably be some 49er fans' response. Well, just because Shanahan thinks he's the guy, does that mean he's the guy? He's been wrong about quarterbacks a number of times in the past.
Yeah, but the ones, minus Trey Lance, he's been wrong about, that being Jimmy Garoppolo, they were 10 minutes away from winning it all. And he didn't even back that guy fully. He didn't want that guy here initially. But now he has a player he wants here who he drafted, albeit 7th-round pick. I get that. But he never fully backed Jimmy Garoppolo. He's fully backing Brock Purdy, and we've already seen where this team can go with Jimmy G. Why couldn't it go further with Brock Purdy, knowing you have the fully bought in Kyle Shanahan behind him, thinking he can make every single play, make every single throw? Like, this offense, to me, we saw it average 33 points last year with Brock Purdy at quarterback.
Yeah, I'm with you.
A full season of these offensive weapons and this head coach, I don't see the disconnect of, well, he's just a mid-quarterback, and, Kyle Shanahan, he wanted Kirk Cousins. Yeah, so what? What if he won with Kirk Cousins? What do we all say? He knows what he's talking about, folks. He made Kirk Cousins a champion. Why couldn't he make Brock Purdy a champion, being fully behind him?
Don't get me started with Kirk Cousins, okay? This is supposed to be a celebratory day, a Niners preseason game day. I do not want to waste it thinking about Kirk Cousins and Kyle Shanahan's infatuation with him. I think something that has been brought up on the YouTube chat, I'm looking at a comment from Mick. Mick says, hope that O-line protects Brock. And that's a big question. You were talking about who is warming up on the field, the starters that are warming up on the field. Brock Purdy is included. I don't remember any of the starting offensive linemen warming up with him as well?
Aaron Banks and Jake Brendel.
Okay, so the 2 starters on the offensive line, 2 of the 5 are warming up. So that's good news for 49er fans. You at least hope that they're going to be able to protect Brock Purdy for the 1 or 2 drives that he's out there most likely. But that's a big question for this team right now. Obviously, we know who the starting 5 offensive linemen are going to be. 2 of the 5 most likely playing today for a drive or maybe 2. But the question marks are all over the place on the second team offensive line. And we saw it last week. got a little bit better in the second quarter and into the second half, but early they were bad, and overall it was a really bad day. Nick Zakelj was just, there's no other way to put it, he was terrible last week. That's something also that I think I'm circling for this game. I'm keeping an eye on the offensive line, not caring so much about those two starters because you feel pretty confident in that unit, that starting unit, which again isn't all playing today. Two of them are likely going to play today. But beyond that, who is the next man up if there is an injury? Not many were really impressive against the Raiders last week. So something that you need to keep an eye on, Niner fans need to keep an eye on, is that offensive line. One, to figure out who you can rely on in the regular season if an injury occurs. But also, are you going to be able to give Trey Lance, Sam Darnold a fair opportunity to go out there and prove themselves this game with most likely all backups when those two quarterbacks are playing?
Oh, I'm worried because if Matt Pryor's playing right tackle and Brock Purdy's playing quarterback, I'm going to cover my eyes, and the words that might come out of my mouth are not going to be very nice because he's been really bad in camp, really bad in practice, and really bad in preseason. We saw last week in a play with Matt Pryor playing right tackle, which how often do you have to rely on your backup right tackle? Not very often, but he gave up on a running play. He was in front of the running back and was like, no, I'm good. I'm not going to block anybody. How can that player be on this team with the aspirations this team has? How can a player like Nick Zakelj, who I know they scouted forever at college, who cares? If you can't play, you can't play. Like Jason Poe, who I like, fullback and defensive lineman, offensive lineman, he can do it all, right? He wasn't good last week. Jalen Moore is supposed to be the backup swing tackle. Not good last week.
I think he stinks.
Is there anybody
Thanks,
on this second-team offensive line you can trust? I don't think so. Maybe John Feliciano, who was playing center, which he hadn't done the entirety of training camp, so that was kind of weird. But I think they have one backup you can go, I like that guy. Everybody else?
He's trash.
Not at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's questions all around. And Jalen Moore, the heir apparent to the swing tackle position, which is what Colton McKivitz was last year, and he was really good in that role. Whenever there was an injury, he stepped in for the most part and did a really good job. Now he's your starting right tackle, replacing Mike McGlinchey, who will be in the house at Levi's today, not playing, but he'll be in the house. Newest offensive lineman for the Denver Broncos, Niners and Broncos, in about an hour and 15 minutes. You're listening to the Kickoff show here on 95.7 The Game. But beyond that, there are tons of questions. Is Jalen Moore good enough to fill in at multiple spots on the offensive line if there is an injury? And by the way, we can knock on wood all we want. There will be injuries on the offensive line. It's just the way football works. You're not going to have a perfect unit. You're not going to have all 5 players play every single game in one season. I hate to break it to you. It's just not going to happen.
I didn't know that.
So you're going to need some guys that you can rely on that aren't going to be every game players, everyday players, to play and to perform well. And it's something the Niners really refuse to address this offseason. They got John Feliciano, Matt Pryor, a veteran as well. They did not draft. I know how you feel about specifically Matt Pryor.
Matt Pryor, ew.
They didn't draft a single offensive lineman, let alone a tackle who we thought they were going to draft. Maybe 3 tackles because you just have no depth there. They didn't draft a single one. They got a couple of undrafted linemen, including Ilm Manning, who he's maybe been the most positive story on the offensive line out of camp. Not saying that he's pushing for a starting job, not even close. He's probably not going to make the 53-man roster.
He might. How bad they were last week and maybe this week.
You never know. He has been a positive in camp, and he was an unsigned or an undrafted rookie out of Hawaii, undersized but playing the tackle position. He's been a positive, but that's really the only positive I can think of on the offensive line, aside from, of course, the starters, who we don't expect to see much of in the preseason.
That's what makes it worse, right? Is San Francisco went into the offseason saying, we have money to sign one big player. And they said, let's make the number 1 defense better. And I get that. Like, why wouldn't you want to have Hargrave and Bosa and Armstead on the same defensive line? That makes sense. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't tell Colton McKivitz he was the starter until after draft night. They let their starting right tackle go into the draft thinking, I could get replaced. I have no idea if I'm actually make this team. They don't pick a tackle. Instead, they pick a kicker, which he missed 2 kicks last week and had the fan base in an uproar, and I understand that. Then you have Cam Latu, who, my goodness, can he catch anything?
No.
Can he not fumble anything? He had 2 drops in practice a day ago. You can't play, you can't catch in the games, you can't catch in practice. Like, if any of their picks, any of the mistakes are this offseason, it's not getting an offensive lineman, primarily a tackle, to back up Williams and McKivitz, and taking Cam Latu. Those are the two big mistakes right now.
And if Jake Moody continues to struggle...
Robbie, where you at? Where's Robbie Gold?
Although Kyle Shanahan did say, and Jake Moody, the 49ers rookie kicker who they drafted with a pretty expensive pick out of Michigan, who's been great in training camp practices, but was 0 for 2 on field goals last week. One of them was a very long field goal, but he did miss a 40-yarder, which he certainly should be making more often than not in games that we're caring about the result.
We truly are. We truly are.
You're going to keep up this shtick that
man.
You care about wins and losses in the preseason?
The Ravens have won like 28 straight games. I want to be them one day.
Okay, they've won some Super Bowls as well. You care more about the preseason?
That. No one cares about winning the Lombardi Trophy. It's relevant. It's relevant now.
Okay. Yeah, we just care about preseason dominance. You know what? Brock Purdy won drive. Hell, play the whole game, Brock.
Kyle Shanahan cares about real games. I could care
Where the hell is
less.
Trent Williams? Is he warming up out there right now? We need George Kittle. I know you got a little bit of an adductor
You better
injury.
play hurt in the preseason, George.
888-957-9570. What do you think? You want a preseason win today? You care about a preseason win today?
This is the home opener, Mark. We have to make a statement.
Oh, God. We'll see. 888-957-9570. That's the Xfinity mobile text line as well. You're listening to the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. A little more than an hour until kickoff. And remember, after the game, we have you covered for overtime as well. So keep listening to us for another hour. Watch the game and then tune back into 95.7 The Game after the game ends, probably around 8:30-ish. And we'll be on the air until 11, reacting to everything going on today. Let's talk a little bit about Jake Moody. We just brought him up. 0 for 2 on field goals last week. Kyle Shanahan has said this week that he plans to give Zane Gonzalez an opportunity to kick today as well. Both of them likely going to kick. That's assuming that the Niners have multiple scoring opportunities today. They didn't really have that many.
That's a good point. You have to get in the
week.
red zone for those to actually count.
They're going to try an 80-yard field goal. Here comes Zane Gonzalez. Zane Gonzalez has, by all accounts, been also really good in camp. Yeah. Jake Moody's been good in camp as well. The 49ers, maybe their plan is showcase Zane Gonzalez a little bit. There will be kicker-needy teams come week 1, and maybe you can trade Zane Gonzalez for a 7th-round pick. You never know what might come up. But Zane Gonzalez expecting to get a kick or two today, along with Jake Moody, is what Kyle Shanahan said. So keep an eye on that. Maybe it's partly trying to show other teams what Zane Gonzalez is and what he can do, but maybe it's also a little bit of a motivation for Jake Moody, who has been good in camp, but 0 for 2 last week. Give him a little extra push that he needs potentially to get through maybe some of the nerves he had last week against the Raiders.
Well, he even said that way back in training camp that he hasn't gotten to kick much in Levi's Stadium because of the Taylor Swift concert. So blame the Swifties for him maybe missing a kick today.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, this is my version. Jake Moody's version now, Taylor. Sorry. But I think for Jake Moody, kicking at Levi's is so interesting because it's open-air stadium. The wind's kind of crazy in Santa Clara. It's not easy. It's not as easy as kicking any Mile High in Denver or whatever it's called now. Like, Jake Moody, it's not a competition. I think he has this job kind of locked up already. But the fact that Zane Gonzalez is there and if Jake Moody continues to struggle, it does make things a little more interesting. Because, well, I'm not saying they're going to carry 2 kickers because, they might. It's Kyle Shanahan for all we know. But
I'll break it. They're not carrying 2 kickers.
But yes, you're right. I do believe that even if Jake Moody struggles, a team like Dallas, who last year their playoff hopes, like Brett Maher, my goodness, just couldn't hit anything. And so I think a team like Dallas, maybe if Brett Maher continues to struggle, give us a 6th-round conditional pick, and we'll be on our way. That always has seemed like the plan the entire time of if Jake Moody stinks or we can't draft a kicker that we like, we have Zane Gonzalez. We can always bring back Robbie Gould. But now that you have Jake Moody, you found your kicker you like, now we can trade Zane Gonzalez for, 6th-round pick, 7th-round pick, and feel pretty good about yourself.
Yeah, and they acquired Zane Gonzalez from the Panthers. The Panthers were about to cut him.
Yeah.
And it was a conditional
6th round,
7th,
I think.
or something like. I think it was a conditional. It might have even been a conditional 7th-round pick.
Yeah.
Like if he plays for you, then we'll give you a 7th-round pick, and it's a non-guaranteed contract. The Niners can cut him, and it won't cost them anything, even if he had a guaranteed contract. It's not much. It's not going to hurt the team's ability to keep certain players or give Nick Bosa the contract that he wants. It's not that pressing. But it is something where if you feel like you've got two quality kickers and there's a team out there that sustains an injury in the preseason or their kicker in the preseason absolutely flunks all of his tests, you got two. You could trade away one. The one thing that can go really poorly for the 49ers this year at the kicker position is if just Jake Moody isn't that guy. And even if they do have a really good option behind him, if Jake Moody struggles and you used a high pick on him,
third highest since 2005.
Yeah, and by the way, not exactly a great history of kickers being drafted that high. One of them,
Craig knows.
Roberto Aguayo, the GOAT. Yeah, not good.
He's trash.
Yeah, he's trash. Not in the league, and he did not last in the league very long at all. If he struggles and the Niners lose a game because of a couple of missed kicks or whatever the situation is, and you start hearing calls for, bench Moody, start someone else.
Could you imagine that?
Kyle Shanahan is never going to hear the end of it for drafting a rookie kicker that high, third round, and having to move off of him that early. It's going to be a disaster. So the 49ers, they could survive it. They could get a different kicker who's better, whatever. And I'm not saying I expect this to happen.
Robbie Gould's still out there.
But if their kicker, they had the pick of the litter. They could have had any kicker in college football last year. If he struggles and the Niners are forced to move off of him, it's a disaster because you wasted a really quality pick on that spot. So, Jake Moody, calm us down and just make your kicks tonight. How about that?
Literally, just hit a 30-yarder and no one's going to care. It doesn't have to be a 60 or a 50-yarder. Just make a field goal. Make an extra point. And we're going to go, okay, it's fine. Kicker's dollars
We're good.
Wrapped up. No one's sweating anymore. That's the thing is, he misses two kicks, overcorrects last week by a wide margin, mind you, but you could tell, even he said, I'm happy I made those mistakes now.
100%.
And even Jake Moody in the press conferences during practice, the special teams coach, Schneider, he even said, he had the perfect workout. So I'm really not expecting this to rattle Jake Moody. He doesn't have, the yips. He's going to be fine.
I think he'll be fine.
But kick a field goal, 33 yards, get 3 points, and we're all good.
Just ease our fears, Jake, please, today. We're an hour away from kickoff. Niners and Broncos from Santa Clara inside of Levi's Stadium. We got more kickoff show coming up next on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. Don't go anywhere. We're back with more. Let's dive into some position battles that could change the 49ers 53-man roster today. Who is fighting for a spot? What's on the line? That's coming up next. 60 minutes away from kickoff. Niners and Broncos. You're listening to the Kickoff Show right here on 95.7 The Game.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years? Like one of the top-rated Samsung, LG, or Sony models. Too expensive? What if you could get up to $1,000 trade-in for your old set? Who would do a stupid deal like this? Right now, at Video Only, you can get big bucks for your old set as a trade-in and a hot price on the new models. Don't be sorry.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
Less than an hour to kick off. Niners and Broncos, week number 2 of the preseason. You're listening to the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. We're getting ready again. Less than 60 minutes away to preseason game number 2. Niners coming off of course, a very ugly performance against the Raiders. Get a chance to get off to Schneid here in the preseason.
We're 0-1, Mark.
0-1, looking to get back to 500.
Season's over.
1-1.
Terrible.
They got plenty of time left in this preseason. 2 more games, only 3. Only 3
so
now.
Much time left in the preseason to get a winning record.
You got 2/3 of the season left. If you're just joining us, Sterling is very, very fired up about the chance to get a win in the preseason.
It matters.
While I care a little bit less about the final results and I'm focusing a little bit more on individual performances. If you're just joining us, though, Brock Purdy has been warming up with a handful of other starters down in Levi's Stadium. Kyle Shanahan said earlier this week he wasn't sure if Brock Purdy was going to play, but it looks like he'll get a drive or 2 to begin. After that, it will be Sam Darnold for the rest of the first half, and then Trey Lance likely for the entire second half, although there is a chance you might see Brandon Allen towards the very end of the game. You and I both hope that doesn't happen. We want to see as much Trey Lance as possible, but we will certainly be keeping an eye on that.
Brandon Allen.
We'll see.
Whatever.
And we'll break it all down after the game. The game probably ends around 8:30 or so. We'll be live on overtime here on 95.7 The Game right when the game ends up until 11 o'clock tonight. So don't go anywhere on 95.7 The Game all day long. Again, Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. We are having a little bit of an issue with the phone lines, but you can hit us up on the Xfinity mobile text line, 888-957-9570. We're also keeping our eyes on the YouTube chat, youtube.com/957 The Game, and the Twitch chat, twitch.tv/957 The Game. All right, Sterling, we'll talk more about quarterbacks as we get closer to the start of the game here today. But let's focus on a couple of position battles that are going to be on the line today. There's a handful of them, really, as you begin to try to map out the 53-man roster. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of roster spots that really matter. I think specifically for me, let's start with the offense, I guess. The wide receiver room is really interesting because you have, obviously, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, your 3 locks to make the roster. You have Ray McCloud, who's injured, but is also a lock to make the roster. So that's 4.
Yeah.
You're probably going to keep 2 more. Probably. I would say it's either 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You include Ray. He has to be on the 53-man roster. What'll likely happen is they'll keep Ray. Once the cuts happen, they then can put him on an injured list or whatever list they want to put him on, the PUP list, whatever it is. And then they hope someone that they cut makes it through waivers, they can pick them back up, and they can fill another roster spot that way. I think they're going to keep 6.
Okay.
Including Ray. So you have
the 5 technically by week 1 that are actually going to be on the field, but Ray's the 6th guy who'll go on the IR list.
So Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ray if you want to count him, and then 2 others. I think Danny Gray is also a leader in the clubhouse to get one of those spots.
I think he's a lock.
Yeah. And then it comes down to one other spot. I don't know how you feel. After watching last week, I thought Ronnie Bell showed the most, in my opinion. Yes. He had, of course, the one drop that turned into the interception in the fourth quarter. It was the Brandon Allen throw, but he had a lot of really nice plays. Didn't really show much in the return game. That's also something to keep an eye on today. Who is getting the run at kick return and punt return? But if I were to guess, I think it's Ronnie Bell that gets that last spot. It's over some other veterans. Tay Martin is one of them who's been considered for that spot.
Chris Conley
as well, who had a couple of nice connections with Trey Lance in the first half against the Raiders. I think it's Ronnie Bell. If he has a good day today, I think he really asserts himself as the leader in the clubhouse to be that last wide receiver on the 53-man roster. So today, I think is really big for him as well.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but I do think that is determined on what happens on the punt and kick return game. Because if Deshaun Jameson plays well, like he did last week in the punt and in doing kick returns as well, I do wonder if San Francisco would elect to cut Chris Conley or Willie Snead, the fourth.
Yeah, Willie Snead.
And once they put McLeod on IR, bring a veteran back and have him fill the role that McLeod would do in the receiver room. Because Chris Conley has been taking first-team reps all training camp. Like when Debo's not playing, it's Chris Conley and Danny Gray. Ronnie Bell's been that kind of second-tier, third-tier guy who I think we saw last week does possess certain skills that guys like Conley and Snead just don't have. Obviously was the flashiest receiver on the field. I think he had the most receptions, the most yards through the air, and the most yards per catch. Like he was the best receiver by all statistics on the field for the San Francisco 49ers last week. So yes, I think he should make the team. But I do think Kyle Shanahan, rookie receiver, is there a doghouse situation here again? It happened to Danny Gray last year, Brandon Ayuk in 2020, I believe. Like there has been some history with Kyle Shanahan with young receivers where he's saying, I like you a lot, but it'll be your sophomore year where you make your statement, not your rookie year.
I agree with you. If I'm trying to figure out who is going to have the biggest impact in the receiving game, I don't think it's going to be Ronnie Bell this year over some of the other veterans. I agree. But the other thing that you have to consider when you get to this point, when you're considering cut down day and getting to 53 men, is also, okay, who do you think is most likely going to get through waivers?
Right.
And that you can then pick back up, put on your practice squad or whatever.
That's why Brock Purdy didn't get cut last year.
100%. Because the Niners were worried. One, they thought highly of him after limited snaps, but two, they were worried if he got picked up, they were going to really miss out on him. So not only are you considering who is going to have the biggest impact on your roster, but who would you be most upset about if you lose to a different team?
That's a good point.
And there's obviously the veteran options who are more proven and you're more likely to rely on for in-game activity right now.
Yeah.
But say you cut Ronnie Bell and you're hoping he makes it through waivers and you want to add him back to the practice squad. And say, I don't know, some wide receiver needy team, the Baltimore Ravens, go and pick him up. And whatever, he doesn't he could play, he could not play, whatever.
Right.
The Ravens have him now. You lose him.
Yeah.
And you feel good, you feel confident that a year down the road, a couple years down the road, that he could develop into a useful piece for you.
Yeah.
Maybe he becomes a third receiver on a future team. Maybe he's your future Kendrick Bourne, who kind of came out of nowhere. Like, that's what they're also considering at this point. It's not just, are you going to help us win games right now? But it's, are you attractive to other teams? And will we feel bad if we lose you? I think the Niners are more scared to lose Ronnie Bell than some of the other veteran receivers that could possibly be that last wide receiver.
I agree this year that, yes, in a year or 2 or 2 or 3 years, if Ronnie Bell isn't on the roster because they lost him to waivers, that would be a mistake, at least how I feel right now after one preseason game. But I think with the impact, like, you can always find a Ronnie Bell in the 6th round next year.
Probably.
So if you cut Ronnie Bell and you want to take a Chris Conley or a Willie Snead, I don't think you're going to be like, Ronnie Bell's gone. Oh my goodness! Like, oh, season's over. Our receiver room is so lackluster now. You're going to say we have our 3 guys we like. The 4th guy going to come back, whether it's week 4, 5, or 6 off injury. Then we had Danny Gray, who possesses some really nice speed. We have a veteran guy like Conley or Willie Snead that can actually do some things and have an impact this year. Where, well, yes, you want to keep Ronnie Bell. He's young. He flashed last week. I don't think it'll be that big of a loss, but if you're in this idea of we can stash a player for a year on the roster behind our top 4 guys, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think today's going to have a big impact on that. Ronnie Bell can help his case, as you mentioned, with the good showing in the return game, because that's what Ray McLeod's injury really, that's where his injury hurts the most. It is in the return game. Ray's the 4th receiver on this team. He had a couple of nice moments last year in the receiving game.
Yeah. Against Washington, a big end around for a 45-yard touchdown.
In the rushing game, he had that end around that went for a big touchdown. So if he can also add into his receiving work solid kick return work, that just increases his odds of making the roster. Maybe he makes the roster listed as a wide receiver, but the Niners have no plan of actually using him really at wide receiver, just on special teams as a gunner potentially, and then as well as a kick and punt returner. But where I think he is maybe trailing in that battle is on the return game. Deshaun Jameson, the undrafted defensive back out of Texas, he had an incredible preseason debut last week.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats, you won't really be able to find him because all of his returns were called back because of penalty. But he was explosive in the return game.
Yeah.
And he looked really good. And he's also making a bit of noise potentially at nickel corner, wildly enough, which we can talk a little bit about. Oof. But in the return game, it seems like it's between Ronnie Bell and Deshaun Jameson. And if I were to gauge that race right now, I think Deshaun Jameson has the lead. He was really impressive last week. It's a 7th-round pick in Ronnie Bell against an undrafted guy in Deshaun Jameson. Deshaun Jameson was shifty last week, made a number of guys miss. Ronnie Bell had some moments where it's like, welcome to the NFL, where you try to reverse field, run backwards, which is the classic, like, speedster college wide receiver tries to do that. You just simply can't do it in the NFL. Deshaun Jameson went the safer route, broke some tackles, got some good gains. Again, they were called back because of penalties. I was really impressed by Deshaun Jameson, and I think he has a decent chance to be one of the surprises of camp that ultimately makes the 53-man.
When I think with the nickel position now being up in the air,
big time,
it does give someone like Jameson the opportunity to show, hey, I'm more versatile than, or I'm retaining me is a much bigger need if I can play outside or I can actually play nickel and also be your punt returner rather than keeping, Ronnie Bell, who's going to be behind, 4 guys are going to play almost every single snap of the season, barring injury. And so for Ronnie Bell, to me, for him, it's like, you're going to have to prove yourself in the punt game and being a receiver, whereas Jameson has kind of already proven himself as a cornerback and as of last week looked really good fielding punts. I think for Jameson, if you had to give a leg up on somebody after one game, you'd have to lean Jameson. But even then, Jameson to me just feels like someone that is a much bigger, like, you have to keep him knowing that there's no nickel cornerback now. Yep. Who's Ambry Thomas? Who's Womack? You could come into the year thinking you have 3 starters and leave preseason having 2. And if Jameson can be valuable in that aspect, I think the Niners would feel much better keeping him over Ronnie Bell.
This is really interesting because the issues at nickel corner, you're right, I think provide a lane for Deshaun Jameson to have a relatively safe roster spot. I think it's more than 50-50 that he makes the 53-man roster. Undrafted corner out of Texas. The return game, the return work is what helps him, but also the issues with Isaiah Oliver at nickel corner, also not necessarily you're not using Deshaun Jameson as your starting nickel corner. I'm not saying
what
that.
What happened there? Oliver took every single snap with the first team in training camp and every single practice, and all of a sudden after one game, he starts the preseason game, doesn't play well. Then it's we don't have a nickel cornerback anymore.
The only quote-unquote starter to play in the preseason last week.
And then you leave thinking, okay, like, what's that about? And they say, there's a competition there. What happened?
It's a great question. And now this week, in practice, they moved Diamador Lenore to the inside, and he was entrenched really as a starter at your normal outside corner opposite Mooney Ward really all season, or all preseason, and it was expected that he was going to have that role again. Ambry Thomas now, who's mostly been looked at as the reserve corner, maybe the first guy off the bench of that group. Samuel Womack is also involved in that conversation. Those guys both played heavily last week. They will play heavily again this week. Game now about 45 minutes away against the Chargers down in Levi's. But they moved Diamador Lenore from the outside to the inside at practice this week. Most likely because they were very upset with how, at least maybe not upset, but worried about their nickel cornerback depth because of how Isaiah Oliver performed last week. And Ambry Thomas getting Diamador Lenore's reps at outside corner when Lenore moves inside. And this is something I said last week. I thought the ideal way that things could play out for the 49ers this offseason when it comes to their cornerbacks. Ambry Thomas, a huge step forward, and you feel comfortable making him your starter on the outside opposite Mooney Ward. And that frees up Lenore to be your starting nickel corner. I don't really think you saw much of that. Thomas wasn't really that impressive in training camp. I have my concerns about Ambry Thomas. I didn't think he was fantastic last week against the Raiders. He was okay, had some nice moments. But if suddenly there's a step forward, the Niners feel more confident in him actually being potentially a corner starter on the outside, that provides a solution to the nickel corner problem. if you don't have confidence in Isaiah Oliver, because it allows you to push Diamador Lenore inside, which is where he played a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we played last year.
And where he really first got consistent run was at that spot. So if Ambry Thomas has a good game today, Sterling, that's bad news for Isaiah Oliver, because I think just the way it pushes around that defensive back room, it gives you a more steady answer at nickel corner.
Is it more of that Oliver has played so poorly? Because it hasn't seemed that way outside of last week against Las Vegas. Or is it just Ambry Thomas has played so well? If that's the case, if the latter is the case, I'm fine with that. But you invested some money, albeit not a lot, but you invested some money more than Ambry Thomas and Jameson and Samuel Womack into Isaiah Oliver being your starting nickel cornerback to replace Jimmy Ward.
It seemed pretty obvious that he was the starter. Yeah.
Yes.
They paid him nickel corner starter money.
And now we're, 2 weeks away from preseason being over with, and we're sitting here saying, well, the guy we paid to be the starter is no longer the starter. Is that because you played so poorly, or is it because Thomas played so well? And again, if that's the case, great. Like, we have more depth there. That's not a bad thing. But if it's the former of Oliver played so bad, which didn't seem to be the case in practice, a couple fumble recoveries and forced turnovers, and was good in coverage against Kittle and Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, albeit in what media could see. But it does worry me that you paid for a guy who may not be your starter at all, and you're not going to cut him, but you invested, and you're not getting that return anymore.
I'm a little of the mind that it's more so because Isaiah Oliver looked bad than Ambry Thomas looked good.
Come on.
I know what you want it to be, but what do you think it is?
It does feel like that they don't trust Isaiah Oliver. That's why he started, and they wanted to see him last week, and he failed.
Which is bad news.
Yeah.
You would much rather the move be out of confidence in Ambry Thomas than not believing in the guy you signed.
Maybe it's both, though, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Maybe Thomas has played so well they trust him to be outside, and Oliver's played bad enough where they go, let's give a guy a shot.
Yeah. So, that was the change in practice this week. We'll see how it's implemented in the game today. That's on the defensive side of the ball, Sterling. That's the position I'm keying in on the most. It's the nickel corner spot. One, who is getting the reps there? Because I think that'll be very telling. If Diamador Lenore, he probably is not going to play. Maybe he'll play a little bit. I don't know. Probably not.
We'll see.
There have been some starters that have been warming up. Brock Purdy is included if you're just joining us. It looks like he will play.
He's actually now suited up.
Ooh,
and
got
apparently,
the pads on?
According to Jennifer Lee Chan, will play at least one series today.
Okay. That's the closest thing to confirmation that we've had. Jennifer Lee Chan, we respect her from NBC Sports Bay Area.
Deebo Samuel, also jersey and pads on.
Oh.
He also might play.
Deebo.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. Well, Deebo Samuel's offseason this year is something we haven't really talked about. We can get into it on our last segment here on the Kickoff Show, and if he does play, we can talk about it on Overtime coming up later tonight. Right after the game, Sterling and I will be back until 11 o'clock tonight reacting to this game. I'm expecting Deebo Samuel to have a really good season this year. I don't know what you think, but
he has to, right?
It's a really important season for him. Him and Brandon Ayuk both.
Yeah.
But Deebo Samuel last offseason, of course, he had the contract issue, requested a trade, or did he? And he scrubbed his social media account, all of that. And he's talked about it publicly that he didn't really have a normal offseason as a result. Mm-hmm. He didn't really stay in shape. He didn't get a ton of work in throughout the offseason. So he came into camp maybe a little slow, a little overweight, and all of that. And once he got his contract worked out, there really wasn't enough of a run-up for him to feel ready for the season. And you could kind of see it. He had flashes here and there. What was it, week 3 against the Rams? He had that crazy play where he...
he owns the Rams.
Oh, he does. he gets up for the Rams, certainly. But it was nowhere near what he did in 2021. I think Deebo Samuel having a more normal offseason, we know that this is an important season for him because there are questions at whether the Niners can afford both him and Deebo Samuel's upcoming contract extension, which will likely be due for the Niners next offseason.
Yeah.
There's questions about that. So Deebo Samuel wants to show out to prove to the Niners that he is the guy to keep if they do move off of one of those guys. And it just seems like he's more physically ready. So I don't know how you feel, but Deebo Samuel, I think he's going to have a big season this year.
He has a point to prove. He said in a press conference that I never want to put the game that I put on film ever again last year. It was gross. It was disgusting. I hated it. It was bad. Those were his words.
He did not mince words.
No,
he basically called his season last year trash.
Yeah, and I think many fans said
I wouldn't go that far.
No, you compare Deebo Samuel's worst NFL season, if you want to call it last year, to most NFL receivers, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But after what he showed in 2021, coming into 2022 is a much bigger drop off than I think fans thought after getting paid the contract he did. But he wants to come in this year and prove he's still all-pro Deebo Samuel again. Yeah. His body's right. He looks a lot thinner.
He does.
He looks like he's ready to be this all-pro style receiver, whether it's next to Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, whether it's lined out wide against the top corner in the NFL or the team they're facing that week. Deebo Samuel wants to be the Deebo Samuel of 2020 all over again.
And what is, I think, a really fun aspect of this training camp has kind of been the friendly back and forth and the friendly competition between Deebo and Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think that decision, that question is coming for the 49ers next offseason if they have to decide between one of those two. They have so many big contracts. There's probably a way they can maneuver around and be extra flexible and make it both work, but it would just be so much easier for them when you consider the rest of the roster and roster building to not add another gigantic contract. You keep one and move on from the other. I don't know how you feel about that decision. I think that decision is coming next offseason. I'm pretty convinced of that, but it is fun, at least for the moment, seeing that competition between Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, because while I don't think there's a decision that's already made, maybe the Niners feel that it is potentially coming.
Yeah.
But seeing those two guys in a friendly and a fun and a team way go at each other in preseason and training camp, I think throughout the season, fighting for touches, fighting for the big plays. Oh, Deebo just broke one for 35 yards. Ayuk's going to go out there and now try to one-up him. I think that sort of thing is going to be really fun to watch this year.
It's two guys who want to be receiver number one, but one of them can't be, unfortunately. Like Brandon Ayuk came into this year, 1,000-yard receiver last year, led the team in targets and receptions, and he said, I wasn't satisfied with last season. Deebo Samuel, coming into this year, wasn't satisfied with last season. You have two guys who are hungry. Now, one of them wants to reprove himself. One of them wants to earn that big contract. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how they work the Nick Bosa contract, because I think that plays a big role into what they do with Brandon Ayuk and how much they can move around and restructure. But these two guys, these are two of the most fun players to watch on the practice field. And when they hit the gridiron on week one against Pittsburgh, maybe even tonight, mind you, they're both in jerseys and pads tonight. Ooh. Like, this is going to be something special.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a ton of fun. You brought up Nick Bosa. We haven't talked about him yet. We'll talk about him on the other side. Are you beginning to get a little bit worried about Nick Bosa? It's the day of preseason game number 2, and he has not reported to camp yet. He does not have his contract extension. Is it time to freak out a little bit, Niner fans? Let us know. 888-957-9570. That is the Xfinity mobile text line. Let us know on the YouTube page as well. Also on Twitch, twitch.tv/957thegame. The Kickoff Show, 30 minutes left. 30 minutes until kickoff. Niners and Broncos from Santa Clara. That is on the way, but one more segment of the Kickoff Show is coming up next. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett back with you right after this on 95.7 The Game.
Sign into a 20-year deal now.
What's holding you back from learning the language you've always wanted to know?
Too hard.
Takes too long.
Not with Babbel.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
Less than 30 minutes from kickoff, Niners and Broncos preseason game number 2 down in Santa Clara. We are getting fired up for preseason game number 2 here for the San Francisco 49ers. It's the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. If you're just joining us, we have some news. A number of 49ers starters expected to play at least a drive today for the 49ers. That includes Brock Purdy. But Sterling, who else should we expect to see on the field today?
We're going to see Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk, Talanoa Hufanga, Mooney Ward, Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, and Javon Hargrave.
That's a good group.
We are seeing almost like 95% of the starters today. This is the dress rehearsal like we talked about earlier for the San Francisco 49ers.
Javon Hargrave going to make his Niners debut, huh?
He's so big. Like, seeing him in person, like, when he walked by, he's defensive tackle. You expect a large man. John Kinlaw's a large man.
All these NFL players are big. Then there's
Javon Hargrave may be the thickest human being I have ever seen. Like, the girth on this man, he's huge. Like, I sat back and I said, oh my goodness, like, I've never seen a human being that big in my entire life. And knowing he's playing next to Armstead and Kinlaw, like, then you have Nick Bosa off in the ether, going to come back soon. Like, this defensive line might be the largest in the NFL this year.
And if they're all there, it's the best defensive line of football.
By far.
It doesn't even matter who's starting on the other side opposite Nick Bosa, right? Probably Drake Jackson. We don't know. Cleveland Ferrell has had some nice moments in the preseason as well. We'll probably see a lot of him today. But you have Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa. Doesn't matter who your fourth guy is. That is an elite defensive line.
And the fact that, and we're probably not going to see all of them together in preseason. I mean, even if Nick Bosa signs right now, he's not playing.
He's not playing, no,
and he's probably not going to play next week either against the Chargers.
Absolutely
But
not.
come week 1, in Pittsburgh, if we get Nick Bosa and Hargrave and Armstead, whether it's Drake Jackson or Farrell, even if it's Austin Bryant, like, this defensive line, people talk about Philadelphia being so deep. The stars on this team are unmatched. Like, I cannot think of a different defense in football where I point to and say, wow, that matches what San Francisco's done. There is no other team that can do, or at least on paper, can do what San Francisco can do this year at the defensive line position.
No, and really the whole defense as well. I mean, Nick Bosa, reigning Defensive Player of the Year, the best edge rusher in football. Some people would maybe make an argument elsewhere, but Nick Bosa is the best edge rusher in football.
Yes.
Javon Hargrave is one of the best defensive tackles in football. Fred Warner, the best linebacker in football. Some people will make another case for that, but Fred Warner is up there. Dre Greenlaw is a great number 2 linebacker as well. Mooney Ward is stepping into a star role at cornerback as well. He was fantastic last year.
Said he wants to be an all-pro this year.
Yeah, that's a big goal for him, but he has the talent to do it, and he'll have the opportunity. He's, of course, the number 1 corner on this Niners team, and Talanoa Hufanga was an all-pro last year at safety. Didn't have as good of a back half of the season last year as he did to begin the year, but there are legitimate stars at every single level of this 49ers defense. You pair that with all the talent that they have on offense, maybe the best running back in the game. You could argue the best duo at wide receiver. There are some others, but they're up there as well. You have the best offensive lineman in football at Trent Williams.
One of the best tight ends in
George
football,
Kittle.
George Kittle.
You have the question mark at quarterback relative to everything else. But this 49er roster is as talented, has the most stars at any other roster in this league, which is why confidence, expectation is at an all-time high, and why there's so much said about the quarterback position, because that's really one of the few holes you can poke, at least on the starting lineup of this 49er team. They are absolutely stacked everywhere else, which is why I'm so excited for this team this year. I'm so excited to watch this game coming up in about 25 minutes. This team is as good as any in the NFL.
And guess what? None of that matters if Nick Bosa doesn't resign. If Nick Bosa is not on the field for 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, that window gets smaller and smaller and smaller. The expectations go from Super Bowl champions to NFC West champions. Like, Nick Bosa has to be on the field this year if they want to win a championship. And if he's not, that goes away easily. He is their most important player. They have to get him back in the building If not today, if not on Monday or Tuesday, they got to get him back, I think, this week.
So then the question is, are you worried? Because it seems like it's just a game of chicken right now. Nick Bosa is holding out for an extra couple of million, an extra $10 million guaranteed, whatever the situation is. The 49ers, of course, do not want to lose him. I still am confident that a deal is going to get done. I'm just at a point now where maybe it costs them a week or two of Nick Bosa in the regular season. Like, we're getting close to that point. Nick Bosa is an incredible athlete. He's not with the team, but he is staying ready. He is working out on his own. That's just what Bosas do, right? Like, he's ready to go 24/7, 365 days a year.
He's not Deebo Samuel going to come in out of shape.
Absolutely
He's going to be
not.
ready to go.
But still, you need some live reps against actual other professional football players. He's not getting those right now. So are you a little worried, one, that it's going to get done, first of all, and then two, that the timing of it might keep Nick Bosa away for a period potentially of the regular season?
My expectation was it was going to get done if it already isn't done and they're just kind of working out the fine details this week. After game 2, they would give him 2 full weeks to get in the building, get those live reps, and kind of get himself back into quote-unquote football shape if he already isn't, because it's Nick Bosa. But John Lynch mentioned in his press conference before training camp began, you have to balance patience and urgency. We've had the patience, John. Now, here's the urgency. Like, at what point does the urgency pick up? Do they give him more money? Like, what is separating the handshake of saying, yes, the deal's done? Is it the bonus? Is it a,
guarantee?
Do they want to add, void years to the end to maybe bring back someone like Brandon Ayuk? It's at a point where it's like, Nick, what do you want? We'll give it to you if it isn't done by Wednesday this week. If it ain't done by Wednesday, on Thursday, I'm on Twitter going, where is Nick Bosa? Why isn't he here? Oh my goodness, get him in here now. I'm worried by Thursday, I think, is when I kind of put that deadline in my head.
Okay. Well, it's a question of you're right. What does Nick Bosa want? I mean, there's other stars holding out. Chris Jones for Kansas City is looking for more money. Is this a situation where he wants all the other dominoes to fall first, sees what money they're getting, and then he says, okay, that's what that guy is getting? Hey, John Lynch, I am 20% better than that guy. Give me 20% more money, or whatever the situation is. It almost feels like he doesn't want to shortchange himself, so he's waiting. He and his agent and his whole side of things are waiting until they have the most information they possibly can, and then they could figure out what he's worth. He's going to get top of the market. He's going to reset the market. But, I mean, you could reset the market with $33 million. You could reset the market with $37 million. Like, he's not going to get 37. But there are different. There's a couple of different levels to this. He can reset the market barely. He could get an extra $3 million a year, or whatever the situation is. I think he's just showing a little bit of patience here, which is a little nerve-wracking, but so he can get exactly what he deserves. And this isn't new for Bosa's. I mean, his brother Joey held out and almost didn't even report his rookie year. He held out for the contract as a rookie.
He pulled a Crabtree.
He did. So, I mean, this isn't new. They're experienced at these sorts of things. They'll stick to their guns. Ultimately, I think the Niners will bend to what Bosa wants because they need Bosa more than Bosa needs the Niners, in my opinion. But it is getting to a point where I'm a little bit worried, not that he's not going to be a Niner for years to come, but that it'll get to a point, as you said, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday comes around, we still have no news, and now you're thinking, is he going to be with the team week 1 in Pittsburgh, or is he going to be even suited up? Maybe he'll be there and they'll have an agreement at that time, but they don't feel comfortable playing him just yet because he hasn't been with the team for long enough.
When after seeing the team be 3-5 2 years ago, then 4-4 last year, and you're kind of thinking, okay, we're 500, below 500 in the first half of the season. Imagine taking Nick Bosa out of a game against Pittsburgh, against the Rams, against the Giants, against the Cowboys. You're losing your best player when you're playing some of, if not in their divisions, the best team. You can't do that. You're arguably playing, or you're kind of playing with poison. You're playing with fire there. If Nick Bosa isn't on the field, you're playing Drake Jackson, who's unproven right now, in Clelin Ferrell and Austin Bryant and Alex Barrett and Kerry Hyder. Like, this room looks a lot different with no Nick Bosa. And if he isn't there week 1, and you're playing TJ Watt across from you, you're going to see fans start to say, they have their best defensive player, where's ours?
Yeah. We'll see. We'll talk more about this in overtime. Again, the game's about 15 minutes away, probably around 8:30. Sterling and I will take the air for overtime all the way until 11 tonight here on 95.7 The Game. But for now, about 12, 13, 14 minutes left on the kickoff show here on 95.7 The Game before we do hunker down on the couch to watch Niners and Broncos. Should be a really fun game. A lot of starters expected to play a drive or two for the San Francisco 49ers. I saw a tweet here from David Lombardi of The Athletic. Based on warm-ups, it looks like Niners rookie Jair Brown will get the start opposite Talanoa Hufanga at safety.
I like that.
It's expected that Tashawn Gibson will be this team's other starting safety, as he was last year. They brought him back, a one-year deal. But Jair Brown getting a chance to start alongside his all-pro counterpart, Talanoa Hufanga, along with a number of other starters on the defensive side of the ball. This is a big day for Jair Brown as well. He's a lock to make the roster. It's not a fight for a 53-man roster spot for him. But it seems like the assumption is he's going to take over at some point at that safety spot, whether it happens next year or maybe down the road this year. He could make a big impression on this coaching staff with the good game today, playing alongside some other starting pieces.
When it's the first glimpse of, like, Hufanga and Jair Brown's play styles are very similar. And coming into the year, you can mention his slow 40 time being Jair Brown's and point to it. Okay, how does the slow 40 time match up with Hufanga, who also has a slow 40 time? But both those guys play really fast. My main concern is he's a rookie. He'll get better, hopefully. But you got a guy who plays quick, wants to make a big play, isn't afraid to take a risk. Over the top is definitely open.
And that's where Hufanga got beat a couple of times
Right,
last
so you're going to
year.
have two players that are going to play aggressive style of defense, that want to play in the box, who can play nickel sometimes, and also kind of play this quasi linebacker role, that want to get sacks, want to play towards the line of scrimmage. Then you're telling your cornerbacks, you have to save us deep. Then you add in Jair Brown, who is kind of like Hufanga light, being in a rookie year and not having much experience, but you put two of those guys in the same defense, there may be a little room for Denver in a preseason game, mind you, that actually matters, to go over the top and score some touchdowns.
It matters.
It matters.
I don't care about the result. Obviously, I'd want the Niners to beat the Broncos, but if they lose, I'm not going to.
I don't want to lose to Russell Wilson, Mark.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Cam Inman, our 49ers insider here on 95.7 The Game. If you're a listener, you hear him throughout the week. Every week during the NFL season. He says he's expecting Brock Purdy to play the first series, maybe two, which that's not news to us. We know that. Behind the starting offensive line, minus Trent Williams.
Makes sense.
So he expects 4 offensive line starters for the San Francisco 49ers today. He also does not expect McCaffrey and George Kittle, but of course we expect Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. 4 of the 5 offensive linemen and Brock Purdy. So that's the entire starting offense that you'd expect to see week 1, aside from your running back, your tight end, and your left tackle. Obviously, those are your 3 most important players, arguably. But the fact that there will be all the other starters out there, it's just exciting to see what this unit is going to look like. We saw it last year, of course. But seeing Brock Purdy back out there, see these other stars back out there, see your offensive line minus Trent Williams back out there, just getting me that much more excited for this game, because I wasn't expecting all these starters to play. No. I was expecting a couple here or there, and throughout the last couple of hours, we've seen some news trickle in. Oh, this guy's warming up. It looks like he's going to put the pads on today. He might play. Seems like we're going to get a good chunk of starters today against the Broncos for, at the very least, one drive, which should be very telling and very encouraging for the 49ers after what happened last week.
Well, it's almost like Kyle Shanahan agrees with me in that they're going for the win today, Mark. They're going to get that first dub of the preseason, but in all honesty, it's going to be good to kind of get a glimpse of what this team should look like. And if they didn't put Brock Purdy or they didn't use the starting offensive line with Brock Purdy out there, I'd be screaming negligence on Kyle Shanahan's behalf of what are you doing? So you can have Jalen Moore out there playing left tackle and hope 4 of the 5 guys can hold up.
Just call quick developing plays for Brock.
Do Jimmy G against the Rams in 2021 when he has a broken ankle. Just figure it out, right? But today, this is really going to be a good, we're going to get a good idea as to where this team stacks for 1 to 2 drives. You won't tell us much. It's not going to give us the entire picture, but it will give us a glimpse of where some holes are on the offensive line, or if there are any. Like, how's Colt McKivitz going to play today?
Yeah.
That's a big question coming into today. How is guys like Troy Fumagalli or Charlie Warner, or like, who's the backup tight end this year?
That tight end battle is sneaky interesting.
There's five guys that you could argue, outside of Cam Latu, mind you, that could be tight end number 2. Braden Willis, Charlie Warner, Ross Dwelly, I think, has been pretty good in camp. I think they'll keep him. But then Troy Fumagalli, he's been great throughout the entirety of training camp and practices. Had a nice game last week when Trey Lance decided to throw the ball. And so, like that, there are 5 tight ends that can make this team, but minus George Kittle, no Christian McCaffrey, and no Elijah Mitchell today. That one also worries me. Where's Elijah Mitchell? I know he's hurt, but Jordan Mason and Ty Davis Price, 2 straight weeks, you play well. I think that running back 2 job is open. Mitchell's hurt so much. They need a reliant running back there behind Christian McCaffrey. Mitchell hasn't been that in the past year.
Something that we can talk about on overtime as well after the game ends here on 95.7 The Game. Stick with us right after the game ends all the way up until 11 o'clock tonight. We'll be back for that here on 95.7 The Game. It's something that Matt Barrows, who covers the 49ers for The Athletic, told Willard and Dibbs yesterday. Not having Nick Bosa in practice, maybe it hurts Colton McKivitz more than anyone else, because Colton McKivitz is your relatively unproven starting right tackle. He would be getting rep after rep after rep against the best defensive player in the league if things were figured out between the Niners and Nick Bosa. But because Nick Bosa hasn't been there, Colton McKivitz hasn't been able to improve as a result of those reps. He's going against quality pass rushers, of course. The Niners have some depth at that position, but they're not on Nick Bosa's level. So I'm keeping an eye on Colton McKivitz at right tackle today. Don't know how many Denver Broncos are going to be playing multiple drives, the starters, that is. But it would be really nice to see Colton McKivitz with some good reps, because it would put your mind at ease just a little bit. But that's an interesting thought from Matt Barrows yesterday, saying that he might have been the one hurt most by Nick Bosa not being present, at least so far in camp, because he hasn't been able to learn by going up against the best player in the NFL.
Well, and add on to the fact they didn't draft the tackle. Tackle depth's really thin this year. If Colton McKivitz ain't the guy or struggles, you don't have anybody to turn to. It's almost like if Colton McKivitz doesn't work, we'll figure it out next year. And we've seen this team. Mike Person was so bad in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Last year, we have, a tight end blocking Hassan Reddick going for a sack. Like, we've seen the blocking of the offensive line in big, pivotal games. One play, it falters. You cannot have that in an entire position for a whole year. Colton McKivitz, I think, will be fine. Trent Williams said he deserves this job. He's worked hard for this job. He knows the scheme. Technique is becoming stronger every single day. But you're right. But Nick Bosa's not in there. And like we heard for the last 2 years, the camp battle of Trent Williams against Nick Bosa made both of them better. Colton McKivitz hasn't had that luxury. If he's playing Frank Clark today, or a veteran pass rusher a la TJ Watt week 1, it could be night-night for the offensive line. It could be okay. Like, this game, they're destroying our right side. And thankfully, it's the strong side to the quarterback. But we saw last week, that offensive line play can kind of make your quarterback hesitant, or kind of put them put them uneasy early. The last thing you want is Brock Purdy coming off the arm surgery to get hit or be uneasy in that pocket, and hope they can kind of secure that tonight against Denver.
Yeah, a few minutes left here in the kickoff show on 95.7 The Game. Mark, Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. If you want to get final thoughts in, you can text us on the Xfinity mobile text line 888-957-9570. Also hit us up on the YouTube chat, youtube.com/957 The Game. A few more minutes here to get your thoughts in on 95.7 The Game. A couple of other reports. We mentioned Matt Barrows earlier. He's saying, based off of warm-ups, expect running back Ty Davis Price to get the start, not Jordan Mason. Interesting. As you mentioned, Jalen Moore likely will start at left tackle. That's expected, in place of Trent Williams. And cornerback Ambry Thomas likely to start. And Matt Barrows adds, if Thomas starts, Diamador Lenore will play nickel corner.
Wow.
Something we talked about earlier in the show. Diamador Lenore potentially getting pushed to the inside, the slot corner spot. Ambry Thomas getting a chance at starting corner potentially today. Who knows? If he has a good day today, Sterling, at starting corner opposite Mooney Ward, That could mean that he's your starting corner week 1. Diamador Lenore is your starting nickel corner. What does that mean for Isaiah Oliver? I don't know. He will certainly have a chance today, likely after the first couple of drives. But this could be a big moment for the Niners defense because there is a legitimate battle now going on for the starting nickel corner spot. It seems between Isaiah Oliver and Diamador Lenore. Diamador Lenore, though, will be a starter regardless. It's more of a battle between Ambry Thomas at one corner spot and Isaiah Oliver at the nickel corner spot. But that's something to keep an eye on here today as well.
I also wonder, how much does having Hufanga and Fred Warner and other defensive starters on the field, how does that help the secondary? We've heard all about, 2019, it was Sherman and a bunch of unproven guys behind him, and the defensive line was so important to making that secondary look so good in coverage. This last year, kind of the same thing, but I think you can point to the secondary being much improved. I do wonder in a preseason game where starters play a drive or so, how does that help Ambry Thomas where maybe it wouldn't help Isaiah Oliver playing with backups around him? To me, that would be, okay, you're not really getting a fair shake here. Where you can lock your guy down, that's fine, I get that. You can go for the 1v1 route, but if the safety misses a read and you got your hands up saying, that's not my fault, I didn't mess that up, you did. That can make Oliver look bad in the eyes of fans, which doesn't matter too much to Kyle Shanahan or Steve Wilkes, but that could make them as a whole look worse than maybe the play actually is.
Yeah. We'll see. It's going to be really fun. This is dress rehearsal time for the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of starters playing on both offense and defense. You will not get closer to how the Niners look week 1 than tonight. It will not look this way next week. By the way, 6 days from now, their final preseason game is on Friday, believe it or not, 6 days from now for the 49ers, but they will not look like this. They will not play as many starters that week, I'm guessing, as they are today. So if you're looking to lock in for one preseason game, it should be this game, and you can stay locked in on 95.7 the game afterwards. We have overtime for you all the way up until 11 o'clock. One last look at the text line and the YouTube page. The text line from the 510, let Brock rip it. That's a P1. He was tuned in all show long. It's how we kicked off the show. Let Brock rip it. Trey, let it rip. Sam Darnold, let it rip. The defense, let it rip. You're fighting for your life, Trey.
Read the text under it, though.
Debo didn't jack it last year. Wow. It's a good one. Also from the 510.
Yeah, same guy.
Same guy. Attaboy. But no, I mean, that is the theme of this game. Let Brock rip it. Let Trey rip it. This is an important moment specifically for Trey Lance. I'm just excited to see Brock Purdy back out there. It should be a ton of fun today. I'm fired up. We got about 5 minutes until kickoff. We got to run over to the couch here in the studio and get it on the TV. But it's going to be a ton of fun today. I am so fired up to see all these starters. It really wasn't what I was expecting today.
This feels like San Francisco 49er football, and it hasn't felt like that for 7 months. Even the last real game they played didn't feel that way. Today, we are finally getting our 49er fix with the starters back, and I couldn't be more excited. We waited for this since the loss against Philadelphia. This is the start of something new, hopefully, where it's a new season, we're refreshed, new starters, some new backups, a lot to prove. Rip it, jack it, whatever you want to call it, do whatever you got to do. Go out there and play like your back's against the wall for the guys that have to win a job out there, and the guys who are in fearing of losing a job, same thing. Like, you have a lot to prove, nothing to lose. Go out there and just play with your head down and your heart out there and show me some fire. Trey Lance, show me some fire. Sam Darnold, show me some fire. Make it more red than your beard is. Go out there and do some stuff. Come on.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Am I right?
No ghosts. Come on.
All right, that'll do it for the kickoff show here on 95.7 The Game. Shout out all you guys for tuning in, but stick with 95.7 The Game. Once you're done watching Niners and Broncos preseason game 2, tune right back into 95.7 The Game. It'll be available as well on YouTube and Twitch. Sterling and I will be back with overtime all the way until 11 o'clock here on 95.7 The Game. It's going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to sit down and watch this game, and we'll talk to you again in a few hours, probably around 8:30-ish here on 95.7 The Game. For Craig, for Sterling, this is Mark Randy signing off for about 3 hours. We'll be back with overtime coming up later on here on 95.7 The Game.
There is no tomorrow.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years? Like one of the top...